next
what
month.
they did what they were gonna do.
Whatever.
Okay, moving on, previous plan, GG Development, Woodland Hill Subdivision. Ed, I'm going right to you.
Yeah, that's what we were waiting for.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. For the record, I'm Ed Pesci of Pesci Engineering, the consulting engineer for the planning board. This subject was prompted by the request of the applicants to release a lot. I was concerned and have been for months over the lack of erosion control on the site. I've sent reports, finally got to the right person. Holly and I met with Mr. Jim Grant, so I want to say August 3rd or 4th. I don't have the report in front of me, Holly, and you may have that at your fingertips. Anyway, we met, went over what we needed to do. A tremendous amount of effort was put into that to respond to my requests for erosion control. So several hundred feet of new silt fence was installed. Some cleaning of the overly eroded ends of the roads, the two Road B and C. I believe Road C is called Old Mill Road now. It's actually given a name. I don't know what Road B is, to be honest. Red Mill, okay.
Red Mill on this one.
And so some work has been done to clean the sand and soil out of there. I went to the site today. I actually put together a follow-on report for you all for Monday night's hearing last week with pictures showing in areas of silt fence that needed to be established to prevent the area behind lots 12 and 13, or 12 and 11, 10, 11, 12, I should say, into lot 17 from becoming a problem. So along the back of the area behind, you were all set there a second ago, but go ahead.
This room has bugs.
Doug?
Spending enough
There
time
you go.
up here.
So behind lot 17, along 17 and 10, or excuse me, 17 and 18 is where some additional silt fence need to be in, or it's going to keep going downhill towards this, to the southern end of the site. So I actually met with a builder who built the house on lot 15, Mr. Justin Quinn, I want to say 2 weeks ago, it was 2 weeks ago, out on the site. He was very concerned about the runoff from 10, 11, 12, mostly 11 and 12 that are under construction right now,
Changing grade.
going down into his site. He didn't know quite how to deal with it. And I gave him some advice. He spoke to Bracken Engineering. Bracken came up with a proposed site plan, sent it to me actually. Just CC'd me. It wasn't sent to me, it was sent to him. Long story short, there is still some additional erosion control measures that need to take place. I went out there as little as an hour ago, and he actually put in, the developer finally put in some silt sacks that are much more functional than pieces of filter fabric that have been there for too long, and did some cleaning around all the catch basins. The catch basin lips are raised because it's not final paving yet. In Road C, there's still quite a bit of standing sand there that apparently appeared since the last time I was there, because most of it was gone the last time I was there. But we've had a couple of decent rains in the last 2 weeks. So there's still quite a bit of soil stabilization that needs to go, needs to happen. What you have before you and what I just read, to paraphrase for the members of the board, the owner of the lot, Mr. Justin Quinn, the builder of Lot 17, apparently spoke to the owner. The owner sent an email, Mr. Sean Broderick, to Leslie and Holly, and apparently CC'd Attorney Cohen, regarding the request to have the slope stabilized, because that slope is now going to impact his lot. And he's not wrong about that. And apparently there are some activities, I believe, Justin explained to me, that lots 10 and 12 are waiting for HDC approval of something that they could do on the outside of the house with regard to retaining walls. So that will help. But the slope from the edge of the retaining wall to the lot line is what he's requesting. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. If the board would like, and it's not the only thing that I requested be addressed before that lot 16 is released. What I asked for was additional, what I recommended was additional silt fencing along 17, basically along lot 18, and the bottom of that slope. There's been some additional, very recent silt fence work, hay bale work, and some shaping with a machine. It's only going to last as long as the next good storm. So I think it's time for the applicant to come back to the board and say how they're going to address this. Now, it's a little bit of a difficult situation, in my opinion. You have the developer who's sold houses, sold lots, or leased lots to 11 and 12, and now doesn't have total control over that. I get it, but I can certainly talk to Bracken Engineering about this and decide where this is going, because Bracken is more than likely intimately involved in all of this.
Yeah, they have to be.
I think I'd like to find out what they know and report back to the board on some recommendations, but I still think we hold the attention, and I'm not trying to be difficult with the owner and developer. I think we hold the attention of the developer by not releasing, my recommendation, not release lot 16 until the additional erosion control measures, which they had said were going to be put in thought last week, or by Monday, I should say, Monday or Tuesday, are still not in place. So I'm happy to meet with the owner's designated person on the site to say, here's what I need you to do, and here's the concerns the board has.
Well, the major problem, having sat on some of these houses at the HCC last year, was that they were told not to change the grade on some of them, and then the grade was minimal on others, and there were some retaining walls for others. The grade's just gone crazy. They've changed grade all over the place. They're driving water onto other people's property. I don't know what happened in there between the HDC, us, and the development, but the grade has gone bonkers in there. I'm not willing to release this lot until it's dealt with. I take Ed's recommendation very seriously. I'll get to you in a second. Anybody else feel differently?
Not at all.
Okay.
The only thing I'd like to add is this a long-term fix, or? So I think
Until,
that was the concern of the abutters.
so until you actually have seeding, you're not going to have full stabilization. It's only short-term until you actually have hydro seeding and you have stabilized slope. It's not a stable slope. It's only a
But can we have a
graded
plan
area.
for that as well? When you're,
I can certainly ask. Again, I don't know
I
where
understand.
Bracken
I
is, but
understand.
I'll look into that too.
So just, I'm
Name.
Paul Grant, I'm one of the owners. Paul Grant, Grant. So this came to our attention really in August, and, I've come out to, in just the last week to try and put things into place, the silt sacks, the bales of hay and the silt fencing, and I'm more than happy to discuss this further with Ed about any solutions that you have. We're, even today, we're doing, purchasing more bales of hay to put into place. We, as you saw, we moved some of the
Yep.
sand that had slid down behind lot 11 there back in place, and we want to hold that. Temporary fixes I'm willing to listen to and implement, and obviously we're all working towards something more permanent. But as was mentioned before, as we've sold a couple of these lots to different people, we are passing on recommendations to them, but I can't really enforce the implementation on their behalf. So
Because you sold them all out, most of them.
we sold 5.
Yeah.
So we still are retaining 7. So I'm sympathetic to some of the concerns, but I also know the other side of it in that we have asked other people, including Mr. Broderick, to do his part, and really in our eyes, he hasn't done much at all, if anything. I mean, he doesn't even have any gutters on his main house. That's certainly not helping.
So Mr. Broderick has another home.
Mr. Broderick has built a home on lot 15, and he owns lot 17.
Okay.
So the main house that I'm speaking of, which has no gutters, is on lot 15. I think he has put him on the second dwelling on lot 15, and I don't know the reasoning behind that. Maybe his hand was forced in doing so. But we've erected the silt fencing on the back of lot 15.
Towards Dead Horse.
Correct. To satisfy the town, but he has not done much of anything. But again, I'm totally open to any suggestions, and we will implement it at ASAP because we want to get this under control.
Ed, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
How much of this is just because it's fluffed up land? It's, you know, stabilization is gonna happen when the project is done, but till then,
So most
What
of
is
the,
it? Is it all
most of
because
the
of that?
problem that we're hearing about is because of the two houses on 11 and 10 that we're hearing about from Mr. Broderick. There's two houses on 11 and 10 that have they basically built a home site, and then the
Yeah.
back end of the home site slopes down to lot 17.
yeah.
So
I didn't
it
know
just
that.
hasn't been stabilized. So some of it's just eroded over time, and it's now time to deal with it. What you don't see, and what I didn't show, it's not the end of the world, but there's a tremendous amount of, there's a perimeter silt fence that's failed.
Yep.
And there's lots of sand on the downhill side of that. Okay, I'm not trying to beat you up here,
No,
Jim,
no,
okay,
no.
but I'm just
Paul,
trying to,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Too many grants in that crowd, right, I understand. But there are some areas that just have never been properly maintained over time. It was winter, people were busy, I understand all that, but now it's time to take some action, especially as we start to
It's the winter again.
occupy it, go into the winter, we don't want to.
Frozen ground,
Right.
all that.
So it needs some attention until you get stabilization. I don't know if lot 10 and 11 and 12 are planned to be seeded now, because they're pretty much bare right now.
And they slope pretty heavily.
And so there's a whole bunch of stabilization now on lot 9 and lot 10 up at the top of the slope.
Yep.
So that was either you, Paul, taking action to do that, or somebody trying to make sure that it wasn't contributing to the problem, but down slope of that. I'm happy to meet you out on the site to be able to look at that and, grab whoever it is that'll be doing that with you, and we'll go and look at it so you can get the proper erosion controls in place. I still think the board wants me to speak to Bracken Engineering about the integrated plan to take care of lot 17 in relation to lot 11 and 12. I acknowledge and share your concern that you don't have direct control over that.
Yeah.
Looks like this is already
We're willing. Yeah, I think that's great. We'll talk about it. We're willing to do, whatever's proposed, and I think Don would be great in coming up with some suggestions for a permanent solution.
I mean, now's the time, folks, to get seating down.
Great.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Next 3 weeks.
Madam Chairman?
Hold on, John was.
It also brings up a point. You still own 7 lots, and I think now is the time so that you address any kind of concerns with those 7 lots. So in the future, we're not sitting here again looking at runoff for things that you had control over now.
Great. Exactly.
Joe?
Well, I was gonna say the same, something very similar, except I think you ought to have an agreement with whoever you sell these lots to, that you're allowed to do these type of activities, so that you don't have to get their permission. And then secondarily, if this board or this other guy isn't gonna do anything, what happens if we rescind the subdivision? Is he back under our control again?
Well, 5 lots are sold out of town ownership. I'm not sure we can rescind that in the middle of that subdivision. Barry?
I mean, but on the other side of the coin, the board could decide just to hold the lots until
Not
something.
release them.
That's right.
Yeah,
Until,
that's the
until
same
something,
thing.
until something
Subdivision.
happens with this guy, which
We
means
just don't release them.
getting real serious. And if it involves having to bring it to a higher structure or higher legal process, so be it.
We should keep our eyes open for, if he's gonna be coming in for second dwellings or changes.
Agreed.
Those kind of things. We can hold his feet to the fire then.
But at the moment, we're dealing with lot.
I understand,
I know.
I understand, Linda, but it's a bigger problem.
It is. But
It's
they-
all one
we're
piece
not
of land,
releasing lot
theoretically.
16 right now,
Say again?
Barry. We're not releasing 16.
I understand.
I agree with Joe entirely. Our function is the entire subdivision, not just down on the one lot. But I do want to ask Holly a
We
question.
can
Hold on.
tell them we can't pull back the subdivision, no.
No, I didn't say that, but we could certainly stop anything from moving forward too, until all these things are corrected. So is there a regulatory statute to close this thing, or are we, I just want to make sure that there's no clocks running underneath this,
There
right?
is no clock right now, it's under previous plan.
All right, because
so-
where I'm kind of heading to is, I think you're being sincere about things. I mean, I'd like to try to continue this, because if we just deny the lot and close it, you're gonna have to re-advertise before us.
Please
Do
continue.
you think you can get things, respectfully to you, do you think you can get things done by our next meeting in October?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that'll save us from having to to,
I'm here for most of the afternoon, then I have 2 other site inspections to do at the end of the day and a 6:30 flight going back, so I'm not gonna be able to do it today, sir, but I can certainly, I'll meet you next week
Sure.
when I'm here, and we'll pick a day, Wednesday or Thursday, and I'll put some time aside, we'll walk the site. I sincerely would like to do that and go with you.
We're on the same page.
Right.
great.
The next meeting would be the Thursday,
10,
the
12.
12th, because Monday's a holiday. So Barry, you have anything?
Yeah, so my motion is continue this till October 12th, and then we can pick things up from there.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh,
This really isn't a public.
well, it's not, it's a previous plan, so there's no public comment.
We could allow it under other business.
Yeah, if you want.
No,
but-
no, it's not about something that's
But
on the agenda.
we've made a decision, we closed it.
It's done.
Yeah.
It'll open again at the next one. All right, Topland Properties. We continued that for your review?
So once again, Ed Pesci of Pesci Engineering regarding Topland Properties. I did an inspection there. This is something I obviously don't get to do very often anywhere, is review a project from the 1970s
Oh, that one.
that has not been
Oh, yeah,
completed.
it's been hanging around
Okay.
forever. Guys, they will hear the conversation at the table in here.
So,
you.
Well, it's
All right,
a,
let's-
it's a preliminary plan.
I don't expect
previous
that
plan.
from an alternate on
I-
the planning board.
I did visit the site, did a inspection of the site. I tried to make a reasonable judgment on what I felt was required for closing out the subdivision, keeping in mind it was designed under old code, old designs criteria, and so on. So I actually met, on the 31st of August, met Ron Bamber, Mr. Ron Bamber, on the site.
Yep.
Very pleasant gentleman. We walked around the site. He'd already taken action on several items. We also met with Victor Pekauskas from Victor Training Corp. to talk about the paving repairs. And we went through every single one of the paving repairs I requested. The final couple items, Mr. Bamber's working on. One of them, he's waiting on me, which I'm doing this afternoon. And that is to mark with an X, or mark with a circle, the manhole covers that have receded over time and need to be reset to grade, because they're just now a big divot and hole in the puddle, if you will, and subsidence in the road. And that happens over time, the bricks fail and so on. So I told him there's gotta be a half a dozen, I'll come out and paint them, and then you'll know which ones they are. He's willing to do everything we've asked. He's spoken to the fire department about the old 1970 era pull boxes that no one needs anymore because we all have cell phones. I said he's gonna pull it out. So he has a good roadmap on what to do. And I told him I would get to do the other part of it. And once he's done all that, and Victor gets his time to do the paving repairs, I'll go out and do another final inspection, and I'll be able to report back to the board so we can move on to the next step.
Great.
I think one of the other things we were talking about is apparently the other subdivisions out there, because of the dark skies, did not put in street lighting.
There are a number of subdivisions, obviously, in town
Sound different.
where throughout the site, right, where they didn't put in street lighting because they requested it as a waiver. And that site, if I remember, has a couple of street lights, but not much.
Yeah, and they don't want to put them in.
There are no street lights. The wiring is there for the street lights, but there's no street lights on the site.
Because your note says no streetlights have been installed. 8 requires condition number 3. Times have changed since
I would-
1970.
I was just reading the old conditions,
Yeah.
and I felt like I should regurgitate what you had no idea about, but that you needed to
But we
understand
can
that that was
enforce
part
it
of
or
it.
not enforce it.
Correct.
Our-
And you
our
can agree in public
election.
forum to vote to waive that requirement
Yeah.
going forward. I don't know if you need to amend the decision, but I'm not sure technically, legally, if you need to do that, but I don't think you do, but
Can I ask one?
Joe?
Yeah, do you think we need to test the sewer and water lines?
so.
I've been there in ground 30 years, 35 years.
So I thought of that, but they're actively
Well, they're being used by
treating,
the houses.
there's several houses
Yeah,
in
yeah,
there.
yeah,
I don't believe it's serviced by sewer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not on the as-built plan, so I didn't see that. But obviously there's I just figured it was septic system.
40-some-odd years ago?
So,
Yeah.
right, but there's obviously, that end of town has its own collection system, but I didn't know if it was that far, if it went that far and got to that.
It stops there, doesn't it, Sarah?
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did.
For the record, that's Sarah Alger.
Yeah, I just happened to know that. and I remember something.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
That's good.
But somebody did just, did stake all those lines to make sure there was.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Roughly a third of the houses, no, I'll say 25% of the houses of the lots are occupied. I mean, off the top of my head, and there have been for many, many years, so
No, I understand.
water and sewer
No.
utilities seem to be in decent, and it's in
Not that old.
every kind of corner of the site. There's one, the very far end of the site, I want to say it's West Wing Circle.
Let's-
There's one house in the back corner.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
And the other thing was dealing with the pool boxes. The third thing was 40-foot wide easement between lots 24 and 25. Did you have that discussion with him?
So I did. He said that has been established, and there were plans for that. I said, great. I said, Ron, just get the documentation, get your attorney, get the documentation to the planning board, so you can demonstrate your compliance with that condition.
So what is it we need to do today?
Well, we already released the lots, the lot ones.
Weren't we keeping two?
Stop.
So we're keeping 2 until all this
One
is done.
conversation. What is it, Holly?
One day you all release all but 2.
Right.
That way this can be continued.
So we can release the other 2?
When you're, if you're so inclined to do that, you can, or you could hold off.
I would not recommend that.
Okay.
I mean, Mr. Bamber is very accommodating, and I would not recommend it, though. Wait till it gets accomplished, and
Yeah,
then I'll do a final inspection, and we need to make sure the escrow account's set and so on.
What's the sense of
much
the board
interest?
what's the sense of the board on the lights?
1973.
Barry?
Honestly, you've brought up a few issues that have been holding back there, and things have changed since '75. I think that it would be inherent for Mr. Glidden to come back and just have us revisit those and amend the document accordingly. That way, there's no question in the future. Instead of doing it in kind of an informal basis,
I agree.
let's do it the right way, like we do for any other subdivision, where we look and exactly,
And we
exactly.
can make a ruling that it doesn't need a public.
Yeah.
I would say that was the cleanest way to do it,
And
protect all
that's
parties.
It'll be on
and that's what
record
I'm
at that
thinking.
point.
Exactly.
Okay, so we did what we did Monday. Do we have to keep this going, or we just close it out now?
You could release, what the documents just released, all of them but 2.
Okay.
2, okay.
Yeah, that's what we said, yeah.
And
Is
then
it-
you can actually close this out right now.
Okay. No, make a
Maybe
minor
ask Mr.
modification.
Green to submit something once.
And then he'll have to ask again for the last 2?
Correct.
Separate. Okay.
Still taking back.
He has to come back for the
And for
lighting
a
thing.
request for a minor modification to
Right.
delete the lighting.
Delete, the fire alarms as well too, and some of the other things that you brought up.
Because you haven't put that in the advertisement, right? That wasn't advertised like that, so.
No,
even
even that.
even
So he'll have to come back anyway.
That's even more
Does
imperative.
somebody
now.
want to make a motion to
So
approve
moved.
the release of all but 2 lots?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Surfside, 106 Surfside Road. I believe there was an issue on visiting the site. Holly, is that it?
Yes, I have it up on, not, but I did a inspection based on your approval for the secondary dwelling. It was very adamant on my inspection that the site was not in compliance with what was approved, and it was determined determined that they had to revise the site due to the drainage. So this is the as-built that shows this configuration. But you kind of put your head, that's what you approved, that kind of circular drive. So we have a revised site plan. The one before you right now on the screen is not the latest and greatest, but it gives you what they're has submitted back to you. The revised one that you all have a copy in front of you has the required amount of parking. That's the only difference between this plan on the screen and the plan in front of you. So I would recommend you all to approve the revised.
Was there an issue in the office, Holly, because we got a designer's site plan as opposed to the surveyor's site plan, which is the original site plan? And now I got a designer's site plan, which doesn't necessarily dovetail with what Art gave us?
What you all originally approved was an architect's plan from Emeritus.
Yep, I've got it,
The as-built, of course, is usually done by an engineer or surveyor.
right?
And that's what you see in front of you. Really, at the end of the day, if you look at the as-built compared to the plan that the
This one.
Emeritus did, there are some design features that they're not necessarily showing from one to the other. I think it's substantially compliant.
But we should approve Art's plan and not
If you
that
all
one.
feel so inclined to, that
No,
might
he's
be
got
the
two.
best bet.
There's, yeah.
There's two driveways, right?
It's,
No, it's two
this is
lots.
106.
It's two lots.
Oh,
That was
okay, it's two
divided
separate
in
lots.
A&R.
So it's Art Gasparo's plan that we need to approve, not the
If
not
you
the
all are
designer
inclined
plan.
to do that, then yes, we can do that.
It is enough for parking?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I confirmed, the plan that you see in front of you, they show the 4 parking spaces. What
We
we're
don't have
really doing is
dimensions on
showing
this
that there's
thing.
3 here and 1 over here.
we don't have setbacks or dimensions or anything on here, so we should approve Art's plan. Does that work?
I think that's a swell idea.
Okay, somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Matt's made a motion to approve
I'll
the
second that.
surveyor's plan, engineer's plan. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there's a minor do we have to do, it's not a minor mod or anything, right?
No, but we will do a revised letter, and this will allow me to sign off for the planning board on their CO.
All right, we have public hearings.
Yeah, we gotta get on this curb cut
Erosion
thing.
went over to October. Valero, we were looking for an extension.
I think we gave them a year. Didn't we do that
They
yet?
had to give us a piece of paper, right?
Oh,
We had to continue to today.
okay.
The action deadline was extended to November 30th.
Oh, it was?
Until they figure some stuff out.
I think they're gonna come back.
Well, he was supposed to come in
They were
today.
supposed to come today. I hadn't heard anything.
Yeah, there's no way they're gonna come here in 2
So-
days. It's impossible.
No, it's not for a plan, for the
No, but,
extension.
I know, but I'm just saying.
We're only going one meeting now.
That's
That's
right.
what we're doing? Leslie,
2 meetings.
Moving
Two
on.
meetings.
Valero, they didn't come back in today to extend it a year. Is this an issue?
Are we talking about Valero?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're blowing her up, she just
Leslie.
walked in.
Leslie, Leslie, take a second, sit down and relax.
Yeah,
please.
just, jeez.
Come on in.
So they have an extension through the end of November.
Yeah.
So we have a meeting, 2 meetings actually,
Right.
between now and then. So I think just put them on notice that they're expected to be here, or no more extensions will be granted, if that's how you want to deal, or.
Well, we were talking
No,
about a
but-
year's extension on Monday.
But what was the procedure to get it to be
Yeah, how
a
do we
year?
get here?
Well, that's the real question.
Well, you all need to vote on that, I think,
What,
because it's,
end of
they're
November?
subject to a zoning freeze. It's a
Oh.
important piece.
Oh.
This is why, hang on a second, Barry, see.
Thank you.
This is why we were having the issue with it, because the RC2 expires in October.
No, not for that.
Not for them?
No, that's just for.
It does for the pit, but,
That's just for the pit, because they're subject to a definitive plan with an 8-year freeze that expires on October 15th. But for Valero, they submitted a preliminary plan
Right.
before the zoning change
right.
happened at town meeting. And the board voted on the preliminary plan. then they submitted their definitive, public hearing was opened, and that locks them in to the RC two until you vote on the plan, and they have 8 years from the date that it's endorsed.
Well, we were,
So by extending the public hearing action deadline out and out and out, that, eventual 8-year deadline is getting pushed out and out and out.
well, we were all talking on Monday for a year extension.
But-
You brought that up.
Right, but what was the trigger to get the year to start? I think Barry remembers what we said, or what?
Yeah, I don't want to keep going over this continuously.
Nobody does.
Let's just accept the extension until November. Let's see where they're at, and then we can reappraise from there. But I don't want to spend another 5, 10, 15 minutes going
Every
back
month.
on, we told them for a year. I'm making a motion that we accept the continuance till November and see where we go from there, and that gives us 2
Here's
meetings.
November 30th.
I'll second that.
Okay. There's been a motion made and seconded to allow the extension to November 30th. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this is actually, do we need to vote to put it on the next agenda, or is it just going on? Okay. We didn't open the hearing, guys, which is why there's no public comment on this. Blaze Shepherd.
For the record, Brian Swain, attorney for Blaze Shepherd. This is an application to have a curb cut within 25 feet of an intersection. If you see behind you on the plan, my client's property is on Brenda Lane and abuts an unimproved portion of Hall Lane. He proposes to put the driveway on his parcel, but up against the intersecting line of Hall and Brenda. The portion of Hall Lane has been in that condition for a long time. There's vegetation. You'll see there's a fence at the end of Hall Lane at the adjacent property's parcel. The board has the authority to issue this waiver under 13920.1C, and we'd ask that the board approve this application.
Do you want to address some of the letters? I think Kevin's response is in here.
I had submitted a response to the letter in opposition submitted by Bob Bates and his wife, and also a letter submitted by the Tovitz. I think there may have been a misunderstanding in Mr. Bates' letter regarding the siting of the proposed driveway. He had indicated in his letter that he thought it was within the layout of Hall Lane, which it isn't. It's on my client's property. He had suggested going down and having my client get access to his property from Hall Lane, but the standard for granting this special permit provides that the issuance of the permit does not have a historic or significant impact on the historical integrity of the neighborhood. So leaving the vegetation on Hall Lane in its current condition would be consistent with how the neighborhood has been historically. He's simply asking for a curb cut to access his property and park within an unconstructed basic paper road.
That's an odd one.
How do you get to Hall Lane? Oh, from,
Across from Timmy's house.
yeah.
If you see the screenshot, Molly, can you go back to that?
Yeah, I did.
So that, you can see that green space, that there's a fence at the top, at the end of Hall Lane. It's very impractical to go that way, and it's a paper road. It's
If
not
this
been
was
used.
Surfside, it'd be in the yard sale. That piece.
I think it'd be a good candidate for it.
That's what would happen.
Okay, one conversation.
Just saying, this is an unusual.
Any other board members have any
One more
comments?
point. So there was some concern expressed by the Tovitz regarding traffic on the road, and Brenda Lane is a narrow constructed road. I don't know if it's in the full layout of the road, but those are the kind of inherent risks that are associated with construction on Nantucket. It's not unique to just this neighborhood. The construction is almost over. He needs the permit to get a CO, and once that's done, he has no intention of parking in the roadway. I don't even think it's practical based on the vegetation. So, while he is sympathetic to the situation, that's just one of the construction problems out here.
Okay, any board members have any questions, Barry?
Yeah. Leslie, Holly, is Brenda Lane right now, and the way it's constructed at this point, is there only any overlap from his property into the right-of-way or anything that we need to be concerned with? I mean, sometimes there's an opportunity to clean things up, and we know that there's no encroachments or anything we should be worried about, right?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, whole lane is private.
Right.
In theory, owned to the center line. We don't see any negative traffic or safety impacts to this proposal.
No, but I'm talking, going back to Brenda Lane now, right? There's, with the subject property before us at this point, there's no encroachments or anything into Brenda, is there?
No.
Everything's copacetic there. I just wanted to be sure, because we do see that sometimes, and there's an opportunity to clean it up if so be it. All right, that helps me. Thanks.
They have a 20-foot setback there.
Is
Joe?
is there any benefit to us to ask for an easement of Hull Lane?
For what?
Sewer, water, in the future?
It's not coming off of whatever that is over the.
Well, Hull
what
Lane
is
has
that?
sewer.
Trotters? What are they coming off of the other side? Is that Trotters Lane?
I think
Trotters
Travis
Lane.
is right, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't come in from this side, it comes in from that side. Brenda Lane comes right up from Hooper Farm.
Keep in mind that when you ask for certain things, they have to be directly related to
What's
the
happening?
application. So.
He has water and sewer
say
there.
direct
That's an
connection,
impediment.
Slightly. We recommend approval.
All right.
I have just one question. Logistically, those two spaces don't work. You cannot get out of the 9x20 with the way he's got weirdly, very odd way of putting this driveway. He needs to straighten out the one behind the 7x17 and angle it off so they can get out. Right now, the only person who can get out is a 7x17. You cannot make that turn on that 9x20 the way he's drawn it. It makes no sense. The driveway should have followed the angle of the parking lot. He's got it angled back so far, you cannot physically get that 9x20 out of there. So the parking doesn't work. What he would have to do is take that lower line and just straighten it out. Even I couldn't, Nat couldn't get a car out of there.
I bet Nat could.
And we both have trouble, we both had CDLs.
Look, can I just,
Leslie?
go
So
ahead.
just keep in mind, like, the parking space is the maximum dimension, it's not the actual size of the vehicle.
But it has to work for zoning purposes, and it doesn't. You can't get that space out. You'd have to reverse the two spaces, frankly.
The area of the two spaces combined is what meets the criteria for the zoning code.
Actually, you have to be able to get in and out of the space legally, and you can't. If you flip them, you can probably get the 9x20 out. The 9x20 is the required space. They don't require two spaces here on the R10, do they? For a single-family dwelling?
I think it is.
Because they have to be two legal spaces. They have to be accessed and they have to be able to get out without moving one car under the zoning code, which is all I'm saying, is just straighten out the lower side, angle it off.
Are we giving them permission to put the parking there, or are we
No, but if they're
reviewing the
required
par-
for two
Wait, wait.
spaces and they can't meet it, they don't get it.
Or are we also reviewing the dimensions?
I think it's just an application to do the curb cut.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
That's the
so
scope of-
Well, you better
let's
fix
let's
it, but
leave
if
the
we're-
zoning up to the zoning enforcement
No,
officer.
because if we're approving a plan
I understand.
as Exhibit A,
Yep.
that does not meet the bylaw. Because it's two spaces?
It's two for the primary.
Yeah, he doesn't have a secondary. We gotta straighten that space out. We can do it through staff, but he's gotta straighten it out so they both can actually get out. Because otherwise it doesn't meet the bylaw. And we're approving a plan that doesn't meet the bylaw, and if you change the plan in order to meet Marcus's requirements, you're coming back here. There's no point for that. So we can do it through staff.
Okay.
but this makes no sense. So, it is a public hearing, we do have people here to speak. I don't know if their questions have been answered out there. Bob, you're here? You gotta come up and speak into one of these things. Because that TV camera thing. Do you wanna, Brian, you wanna?
Sure. Pull that chair up. There you go.
And then take that thing, go that way.
Yeah, thank you.
Just Bob Bates, neighbor. First, I'd like to thank Holly for her work this week. As a neighbor, we didn't receive any notification of this. Found out later on we may fall right outside the 300-foot
300.
notification.
Yeah.
Concern is not only the curb cut, which is going to be comes directly out and goes right into the across the street neighbor's driveway. They line up directly across from each other, so getting in and out of either one will be difficult. This person, Mr. Shepherd, has laid out trees. His driveway is actually in the right-of-way for the road. It doesn't stop at his property line. It comes all the way, all his trees and everything that he's put in are actually in the road right-of-way. Because the width of the road, if you look at it there's an actual photo, you look at the width of the road, and if you go drive down, he's put trees light out actually in the roadway. On
In the layout of the road?
In the layout of the road.
Well,
Everybody else has
everybody
got
has
trees
that.
in
Well,
the
that's
layout of the road
shrubbery and
also.
stuff that's been cut back and has grown back in. It's actually brush and stuff. It's not trees that people intentionally planted.
You can't really tell from the GIS, 'cause that's,
This one's not too far off.
I'm not sure
I know
what,
these properties, they're not too far off.
I mean, he has a Brenda Lane address.
Right, which was they subdivided the property to create the Brenda Lane address. 2 Brenda Lanes didn't exist until they made the decision to do this.
I remember
And none of the
this.
abutters were
I
advised that
remember
that would
this,
happen.
it came off of Hall Lane side, didn't it?
Right.
I remember
Well-
this subdivision,
The previous owner, who was the grandfather of the
right.
And we know who
owner,
that is, yeah.
Mr. Marks,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he used that as his property, but it was a Hall Lane address. And he had actually, there was a blockage, and he had used that for his landscaping business.
I remember
Yeah,
this.
all right, but
So I'm not sure when this lot was created, but there was no notification for the abutters when any of this was created either.
what year was that? The Canterbury one in '73? I mean, when did that happen?
This wasn't that long ago because it didn't exist.
No, it's
It wasn't
within
it
the
wasn't in our
last-
GIS system, because I'm on the system
Within the
all the
last
time.
5 or 6 years.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but it doesn't exist in our GIS system.
I mean, I look at this as an R10 zone, the dirt's there, it's been sitting there with frontage. The whole lane thing's been hanging out like that for years. That should be sold to the abutters. If I was a neighbor, I'd be like, let's get rid of that potential road and just have a driveway. Why would you want cars coming through there?
Part of the reason
That's
I think
It
insanity.
has nothing to do with what.
I know,
Right.
but the comment in the letter talks about he could go Hall Lane.
you
I
could
mean,
go Hall Lane out
theoretically,
through Hall Lane.
I understand that, but
that's where the
it
driveway used
makes
to be, is right
sense
there.
that Hull Lane eventually is extinguished to the neighbors and just goes away
Yeah.
for the betterment of the whole situation over there, in my opinion. In this particular case, I'm not usually for ending roads, but in this case, I would be, because it makes sense. But, I mean, this lot is sitting there on Brenda Lane with an address. I mean, I don't know how you could say that he can't have a driveway.
The
I mean,
I do understand,
I mean-
because, I understand the need for the driveway. I think the problem is it needs to be laid out on the property, not in the roadway.
Well, the driveway has to start in the street.
has to
It
start
goes
on
Start
on
at the edge of the
property.
street, at the edge of the street, not in the street.
Yeah, but I'm not
But
sure
what
what
does
we're
that
talking
mean?
about.
I'm not sure what you're saying. How wide's
You
the
have
edge
to
of
get
pavement?
to the
18 or
driveway
20?
I think
across
it's 20 or
Brenda Lane.
22, because,
22?
all of the neighbors paid to
Concert
do
Road
the
ain't
road.
22, so you know.
Okay, so it's probably 20, because we all paid to do the road ourselves. It was an expense that we all took, that the town then wouldn't take the road.
Yeah, but, okay.
It didn't go anywhere.
We have a lot of that
Right.
on Nantucket.
And
Alright,
then
let's
there's
stick
been
to
things
these.
that over the years, we've had to stop, like cutting of the roads and things like that, because it was still within the 5 years of when it had been paved. But the real concern here is that there a lot of people didn't receive their notifications, and that's why I think a lot of our neighbors aren't here. The driveway itself, like I said, it does go right into somebody else's driveway. It's a direct access across. There is another means to access the road, and all summer long, this has been nothing but a debacle because of the way when they delivered the home, they blocked the road for a
Well,
full
was it
day.
a Huntington?
Yes.
Well, that goes with the territory all over the island. They have to block the road in order to get the thing in there, and then the crane comes in and lifts it.
Bob, can I just when you say in the road, and all that, you mean layout the I
In the
mean,
ro- in
well,
the- in
every
the
driveway
road.
has to go through a layout. I mean, that's where the whole Belgian block aprony stuff has come in the last, let's just say 10 years. I'm not gonna, where the applicant, whether it's a primary or secondary, has to build something to tie the driveway into the
Road.
edge of pavement, so you don't have all the,
But there's also the
So I'm
the
confused.
trees and stuff that they're putting along the edge of the road, so that if, and I'll use this as an if, they had visitors coming, they're gonna be parking in the road. They're not gonna be able to get off the street, they're gonna have to park in the road. They've put trees.
So they're
So
putting
there's
trees
no
within
place
the
to put
roadway
it.
layout.
no
And
place to
they
pull
really
over.
shouldn't be doing
Okay, okay.
foliage
That's different.
now as opposed to stuff that grew out over the last
Right,
30
exactly.
years when they created Brenda Lane. They shouldn't be putting plantings in the roadway layout that everybody else has the right to pass and
Irrigation
repass.
system, there's an irrigation
I got
system
it.
in the roadway layout, there's all sorts of stuff that's in the roadway layout.
Barry?
That's why I asked Leslie, were there any encroachments into the area?
Well, she wouldn't know if
That's-
it was underground.
There-
mean,
these-
Hold on, how about if we have Leslie answer that question?
I believe I said I wasn't aware of any,
Okay.
because I'm not. I haven't personally been out there, but nothing's showing up on the survey.
Okay.
But each property owner does technically own to the center line, and if they choose.
Rights
put
to the center line.
yeah, they have rights to
Not
the center line.
owning, yeah.
They choose to put landscaping on their side of the road, as long as it doesn't impede access, and they're doing that at their own risk. It's a private road. Another neighbor who wanted to improve the road or install utilities or something like that could have them removed. It's not a public road. With public road, that would be a little bit different.
Right.
Relative to the planning board's jurisdiction.
Okay.
So
So
they
that's,
shouldn't be planting in the roadway layout for people who have
Well,
passed and bypass.
I think that's why I asked
No,
staff.
that's interesting.
That's
Yeah.
why I asked staff for the legal
Okay,
opinion.
we're out of control here.
We're,
Everybody's talking. Go ahead,
We're
Brian.
looking at the survey, that's the most credible thing, that's stamped by an engineer. He said, she said, sort of what's going on out there. I mean, there's no photos, there's no evidence of anything. We're here to approve the curb cut based on this plan, and as Linda suggested, we could probably alter the driveway line so that the 9x20 and the 17x7 are flipped,
And they can get out.
and they can get out.
Both
before
of
the
them.
zoning.
I mean, it seems to me with the, I want to just get back on this planting stuff thing. I mean, it seems that it would be, it's the applicant's advantage to make it so that the layout is clear for a variety of reasons, whether it's having a birthday party or sightline or anything, appearance, you know. So I would assume, I mean, can we attach anything to that? I mean, I'm fine with what we're doing. I just think that will be handled a different way.
It's a private road. The people have the right to pass and repass on the private road are the ones that would have to enforce that, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't cut my side of the road
So-
back, nobody else would.
So
I mean, I don't know.
that's enough.
It's crazy.
One conversation at a time in this room. It's not downstairs. Whoever's got rights in that road would have to have a little conversation with Brian or whoever in order to get the trees out of the right of way. Leslie's right, if it was a town road, we have absolute jurisdiction to get the trees out of the right of way. But being that the trees have nothing to do with what they're in here for, we can't jump to the trees in this venue at this time.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
If it's in a private road, then how does the town have the right to give the permission for a curb cut?
It's not
Because that's a
on the private road.
zoning issue on the property itself. And all properties, whether on private or public roads, are subject to the zoning requirements, which is why it was so hot to trot on the parking spaces.
Through you, Madam Chair. Brian, is there any possible way to rearrange I see the parking, you met the requirements, but extend the driveway and make, I know you're encroaching into the main part of the backyard there, but just to have a turnaround or something so that for Mr. Bates's concerns coming out across the other driveway. So maybe if there's a driveway on the left-hand side for a turnaround, they can actually pull out, so they're not backing out in that corner in front of the other curb cut.
I can check with my client to see if he would do that.
Unfortunately, this is not one of those areas where they're required
Not required,
to
just
back out.
question if there was a possibility or
I mean,
a
could we,
thought.
as Linda suggested, maybe make this subject to like Leslie or Andrew's staff approval, something that's mutually satisfactory to my client and planning staff?
I have no
That
problem with
addresses
it.
everyone's needs.
Does anybody else have a problem with them backing out on this road?
I'm fine with,
I mean,
let's grant the curb cut.
The issue about having another curb cut directly on this road that's really used by the property owners, about having a driveway across from another driveway. That's the case if we had that problem, we'd be real trouble in town, and even in my neighborhood. No. That's not something we can really consider, that there are driveways across from each other.
Yeah, the one last thing is, there will be an as-built that'll show the parking, and it'll have to be compliant with zoning, and it'll have to be on the applicant's property. So, you know, rather than eyeballing it, that will happen before he gets his certificate of compliance.
The real issue we're here for is whether or not we think a curb cut within 25 feet of an intersection, and granted, that part of Hall Lane isn't constructed, is why he's here, solely
Yeah, I
why
think it's
he's
fine.
here.
I don't think it's an intersection, really.
It is,
No, I know, but
Yeah.
it's not constructed,
not
so.
constructed.
I wouldn't-
Realistically.
which would be one of the reasons why Leslie would write the decision, Holly would write the decision that we approved it, is because Hall Lane is not
Right,
constructed.
right. So, okay.
Is there anyone else who'd like to, I know there were, the Tovet's here. Anyone else like to speak to this issue?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, somebody made, thanks, Bob. Anybody else making a motion? To approve,
I'll move to approve it as,
provided the parking,
provided that
parking
get
meets the
reviewed,
requirement,
parking is reviewed by
Recap.
staff.
Right.
meets the requirement, and it can change
And then
in
there's an
staff.
ultimate as-built.
And I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
those public notices, we just checked, they're postmarked September 1st, so that was almost 2 weeks before the hearing.
okay.
Thank you.
We're just
You know,
having some trouble with the mail. Someone else asked me today, they didn't get it, and it was 3 weeks ago they didn't get it.
They received it.
Okay. All right, Michael and Melanie Hajar, didn't we just do something with that?
That's the second dwelling part that's been continued. This is different, right?
What is this one? Oh, the driveway, these driveways again?
Don't worry about it, Linda. Motion approved.
I'm in a butter. Nice try, but I'm in a butter.
That's pretty good. Did you just join the board?
You just figuring that out?
Six board
It
members.
is nice to be sitting here, though. It feels like the old
The
garage.
license plate says Badlands,
I
I'm
see.
in a butter.
I see.
Oh, please don't bring up that ghost one.
You go.
I know.
All
right?
right, great.
I'm recused.
All right, so 6417 Michael and Melanie Hajar for the applicant.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Bodett.
Chairman. Rick Bodett for the applicant, Michael and Melanie Hajar. We're here today seeking a special permit to create a secondary lot under the Nantucket Housing Needs Program. The overall lot, the existing lot, is approximately 46,000 square feet. It's in the Lug 1 zoning district. The proposed secondary lot, which you'll see on the Bracken plan behind you, is 16,047 square feet, meets the dimensional requirements of the bylaw. That's proposed lot B that you see behind you. It will have an available ground cover of 1,123, I think, square feet. The market rate lot is proposed lot A, and that's the one that has the existing houses on it, and that's the impetus for us asking for waivers, and also, I should add, that we're asking for approval of a tertiary dwelling, because 2 of these dwellings exist at the moment we sell this lot, or someone pulls a permit on it. There's going to be 3 dwellings on the lot. So we received approval for a second dwelling, I should say, subject to a plan being approved, to create that existing garage office you see behind you, to create the second dwelling.
It's still on here.
Yeah, I know. It was approved, and you needed a Bracken plan, and we submitted it. And the reason we continued it is so that we could come in here. I think staff recommended we continue, keep it open, so that in the event we're denied here, that can just be approved, I think would be the plan. Anyway, but the plan here is to have this be 2 dwellings. The existing house you see on that plan is 715 square feet. That's our proposed secondary dwelling on the market rate lot, which has to meet under the bylaw now, the tertiary dwelling requirements. Those requirements are that it's 650 square feet of ground cover. That's why we're asking for a waiver of that 715 square feet. It also has to meet the requirement that it's 650 square feet of gross floor area. And it does not meet that either. It does have a second floor. It's a two-bedroom dwelling, and it's 1,260 square feet. The other dwelling, the one that's 814 square feet, is proposed to have one bedroom in it. That would be the primary dwelling. Existing house is what my clients live in right now. So that is essentially the proposal before you, and the waivers we've requested. I did read the staff report. All of the questions, I think, in the staff report can be addressed, I think, on a plan, but I can certainly go through a couple of them here. The surface of the driveway you see there will remain gravel. The driveway you see that goes to the rear of the property and exits out onto South Shore Road, that's abandoned. I'm actually not really sure why it's on Don's plan, but it is. It's gone. It existed when this was a single lot. It was an A&R a few years ago. The width of that driveway we can put on the plan, and its max width at the entrance is 26 feet. It's 14 and a half at its widest traveled way. But it does go down to 8 feet where it narrows there, so I would expect the board might want a condition to make that 12 or 10 or whatever you think is sufficient all the way around the driveway. We can get you driveway easements. We won't be able to sign driveway easements, obviously. We are proposing, I should add, that Lot B uses the existing driveway that's there, that horseshoe-shaped driveway. We can put parking spaces on it as the staff report suggests, but of course, they're not going to get a building permit without showing parking spaces or CO. So, we can certainly put it on the plan. That's fine for proposed Lot B. And we can put the ground cover. The proposed ground cover for Lot A, the total will have to be no more than, I think it's 2,067 square feet at max. Right now it's 1,529 square feet. So it has the bigger lot has another 500 square feet of ground cover. The one thing I think we should discuss at some point, if you're inclined to go along with this, is the staff report's recommendation that it be re-noticed, because we didn't ask for a waiver of 2 driveway accesses for this lot, and the reason we didn't ask for that is because this existing driveway access is pre-existing, non-conforming. It's been there for over 20 years. So I respectfully don't agree that we need to ask for a waiver for something we already have. It's the same matter as it would be if it were one lot. We can only have what's there. We aren't proposing a separate driveway for Lot B, which I think is the purpose of that bylaw requirement, that you don't want a separate driveway for the 2 lots. You want these easements, and that's what we're going to have. So I can certainly answer any questions that you guys have.
Sure. Leslie, I want to go right to you at this point. So do you feel like the concerns that you've raised have been addressed adequately, or are there other things that, as a board, we should really be focusing down on? And if you need a minute, please go right ahead. Yeah, I really want to give you a moment here.
Can I ask an easy question?
Ask an easy question, please.
Can you go over how big the tertiary is going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we have proposed as the primary, again, we were here last month to propose that this be a secondary dwelling. The reason we did that, knowing this was coming, is because we wanted to get a building permit for our second dwelling and convert that into the dwelling, this garage office. So we've already gotten relief based on the size of those dwellings, because they don't meet the 20% requirement. Anyway, so what's proposed is for this.
Hold on.
No room.
We're going to stop. Go ahead.
I'd like to let the board know that, no, they did not approve the plan. They were pending on a plan. They did not approve.
They haven't approved
Right.
anything.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
Right.
Thank you.
The dwelling was not approved.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Well, it was a positive.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. We'll either way, if you deny this, we'll come back and hopefully get that relief. Anyway, the point is that that's what's proposed as the primary dwelling, the 814 square
Okay.
foot.
Okay.
The tertiary is the 1715 square foot because it's the smaller one.
Okay.
But it's, you said it builds up, floor area ratio
Its
is
floor area
1260.
is way over, 1260.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ground cover is slightly over. It's the floor area that's bigger.
All right, can you just stop there for a second? Leslie, I see your eyes raising tremendously at this point.
Well, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I wasn't privy to the discussion about what was approved or.
Yeah,
That's-
I think
that's-
to see it printed on the
Just-
agenda, but it's another.
That's
to
okay.
actually
This-
participate.
So this is fine because sometimes things escape us as well too as time marches on. So if we need to start fresh here, please go ahead.
Well, can I finish up on the tertiary?
Yes.
We just had a big, one of the applicants.
I know.
Yeah, last night.
Last meeting,
Yeah.
we're not gonna give him 850 from 650.
Yeah, which was a new
On a
build.
new
It's a
project.
new build. I mean,
Big
to me, that's a big difference. I mean, this is an existing house that they live in.
Still open for permit.
Well,
Just,
it's
but
a
he's not
difference.
wrong about what he's saying.
It's
so.
I agree.
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm
Look,
just,
I
I don't
wouldn't.
wanna, you know.
No, look, Joe, I wouldn't have the guts to sit in front of you with a new build at 1260 gross floor area. I mean, or, maybe much more than 715 on the ground, trust me. So if it wasn't existing, I wouldn't even ask,
Okay,
believe me.
okay.
Yeah.
But that's, to me, that's a pretty big negative.
So
So the tertiary's going on the B, right?
No.
Where's the tertiary going?
Tertiary is
Tertiary.
what's existing.
Okay, that's what I thought, but then somebody said, what are we doing for a tertiary? It sounded like we were building one.
I think
Okay.
Joe just wanted
Okay,
to explain
okay,
a little
okay,
better.
okay.
Yeah.
No,
Got
I
it.
understood you, but I just was,
It's near the
thought maybe
number.
I wasn't here
yes.
correctly.
So the seven
Can you hold
fifteen.
on? Can you hold on?
All right.
Thank you. I really turned to Leslie. I know you guys are passionate, but please just stop interjecting at random. If you need to be recognized, please raise your hand. I will do that. But I really did ask for her comment. I allowed him to come in, so please.
Okay, so just to sort of go through what's happening here. So they have two existing dwellings on lot A.
Right.
Which will be the market rate lot two. And then you want to be able to construct a third dwelling on lot B. So lot B would effectively have the secondary dwelling, and lot A would have the primary dwelling and the tertiary dwelling.
Sort of. I mean,
No, there's-
if I may,
Everyone's
that's the
confused.
way
Isn't
I
that
see it,
one-
and that's the way I set up the application initially until I read the new bylaw, which calls this a secondary dwelling that has to meet the tertiary requirements.
Yes.
Same thing, right? But yes, that's the way I look at it as well. Exactly.
So, on lot B, now you can have a secondary dwelling of any size. And on lot A, you can have a primary dwelling of any size, and then another dwelling that has to meet the tertiary standards, neither of which fall into that, right?
Right.
So the 715 square foot existing house is actually like 1430.
It was 1260.
It's
1260,
1260
okay, I was
gross floor area. Right.
Okay, so the board would be granting a waiver from 650 to 1260. And
Right.
I can just interject, I mean, that's, a much larger waiver than you all have granted in the past, even for existing structures, in the 800s, and that has been, as I recall, because there were utility rooms, or there were access stairwells, or other, utility functions that contributed to the size. It wasn't because there was all this extra living space. So I think that's something that you should keep in mind, and you had a lengthy discussion about that at the last planning board meeting, which was related to new construction, but still same general concept. The bylaw says 650. When are we losing sight of what the intent was?
I'm confused as a neighbor.
And
Hold, all right, but do me a favor.
I got my hand up.
Yes, I know you do, and we haven't even
But
opened the.
that's not right.
We haven't even opened the public hearing yet, so
I
please,
thought this was
please
gonna be
come
an
on.
hour-long
In
meeting.
general, it's not right.
Please.
So,
Stay-
I gotta go to
this is one
work, too.
comment. And then for the driveway, so you have two
Do me a
existing
favor. If you're gonna keep
on
doing
South
this, stop
Pasture
there.
and one on South Shore. You want to
Please.
all of those?
I'm sorry, no, we don't.
Okay.
The one on South Shore that you see does not actually exist anymore. You can see it on the aerial, I think, but that's kind of old. I mean, it's grass, it's abandoned, it's not used. It was created when this lot was part of a bigger lot that has been annexed. So it doesn't exist, we don't want it. The horseshoe shape is all we use now, and that's all we want to keep. And the proposed lot B would access off of that existing driveway.
Okay, so with that in mind, I don't think it would require being re-advertised, because they're already there, and it is effectively sharing the driveway access.
So,
Go ahead.
if I may, so believe me, the fact that 1260 is a lot bigger than 650 is not lost on me. It's simple math, okay? And I don't really doubt that that's a bigger waiver than you've granted, but please keep in mind, the purpose of that is so that we can create this proposed lot B to sell it off. One of the things we looked at is, can we just put a tertiary on proposed lot B that'll be much smaller, and it just frankly wasn't worth what we would get for the vacant lot. If you limit that to a 650 square foot structure, 650 what's the word? 650 gross floor area as well. So if we don't, the whole purpose of this was to create that lot, and we can't do it with such a small structure.
All right, so I'm really confused adequately now beyond belief. You've got two lots, both of which have the potential to be developed here when sold off. So are you restricting the ability to do additional dwellings on either of those lots, so that at the close of everything that we do, there's only 3 dwellings total for the entire project? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, you certainly are, because we're not allowed 200 zoning anyway.
All right, I want to be, okay.
Of course, yeah, yeah. The maximum amount of dwellings that can go on proposed lot B,
Yep.
because we already have 2, right, on lot A,
Yep.
is going to be 1. That's it. And of course, we can't put another tertiary on lot A, because one of them already is a tertiary, really. So yeah, what you're looking at, what I'm proposing, is the max number of dwellings that could be on this property.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, what if you called the garage the tertiary, the other one the secondary, you need some other waivers from somebody probably, that you already got. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then we're going from 650 to 814, and there may even be some out areas within the garage, existing garage office, that we can subtract from the floor area ratio. So it might not even be that 815, it might be 742 or something.
Oh, it's got an upstairs. I mean,
No, but the garage, does the garage count?
well, it's gonna.
So it's only the upstairs counts. See what I'm saying? So if you got a utility closet and a couple little things, you get under
Right, it's
800
Sorry.
and make that the tertiary, the other one, whatever the secondary or the primary, then you put whatever the primary or the secondary on lot B, then I think I would be a lot closer to doing that. But that 1,260, that's gotta go somehow.
Well, right, but so it's a potentially good solution, but let me just explain what's going on in the garage. No part of that is gonna be a garage or office. The whole thing's gonna be a dwelling, and it's got a bedroom upstairs. So all of it will actually, I think, be bigger than, because of its ground cover, it will likely, maybe not, but I think it would likely have a bigger gross floor area than the 715 dwelling.
So
See what I mean? If it were a garage, of
Okay.
course, then
So
yeah, I'm with you.
if it
I
was
mean,
what it says on the plan,
Well, it's
you know.
proposed to be a dwelling, that's the whole purpose of this. And that was the whole purpose of us asking for a second dwelling last month
Okay.
as well.
Well, I missed that.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I
No,
didn't,
no, no, I
it's
just-
what's there now, so I didn't mean to mislead
No,
you.
no, no, I didn't.
Doesn't have a second floor now.
Can, all right, you're part of the public.
Yeah.
You have the
Pointing
entire
for you.
board to both sides. You, no, I didn't want to see that. You should be there. Please, let the board do its job. I appreciate what you're saying, but come on. Now,
The last comment got me off on another whole thing here. So theoretically, let's just go back to ground cover and 3 kitchens and out and outbuilding. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about, right? I mean,
Right.
so a second dwelling in proposed lot B can be has to be has a limit. It doesn't have to be 7% total of
Yeah,
everything
it
when you
has to
do
be
that.
1,100 square feet.
Yeah, you have forget about the 20% differential thing. I'm talking about what's allowed on a 1 acre lot, whatever size this is. If it's a little more than 40, I don't know what the total square footage.
46.
Okay, so you got a little extra. Okay, so why does it matter which one of these little? Oh no, this building isn't here anymore.
No, it's there.
Oh, it's there.
It's there, we want it to be a dwelling.
You want that to be the tertiary.
No.
Well, no, I mean that's what it has to be,
Well,
though.
one of them, yeah, one
You
of them.
can't have
I mean,
two.
Look, I don't care which one, you guys call it tertiary.
We haven't had approved 2 tertiaries yet at town meeting, so we only can have 1.
No,
So
I
the
know.
existing house at 715 has to become an outbuilding, right, Leslie?
So the way
I mean, I'm just, or a
Stop.
So
studio or something
more generally,
without a kitchen.
the way the bylaw is now written, after approval of Article 74.
You can have the tertiary on either lot. I know that.
let her finish.
So after approval of Article 74, for the first dwelling unit on, like for this instance, on Lot A, it can be whatever size. Lot B, you can have your dwelling unit at whatever size, and we have to work around ground cover. When one of those 2 lots gets a second dwelling unit, it is subject to the standards of the tertiary dwelling.
Right. No, I know that.
So-
But it's an existing one, so we're back to that, just,
No.
they're existing.
But the garage office is not, it's existing as a garage and office, it's not existing as a dwelling.
So do they want to take the bigger of the 2,
Make it the house.
use our waiver ability, because it's existing, or what we've been doing at least since the last 2 years, and take what's going to happen to the little 715 existing house?
So I think you just have it flip-flopped is all, Nat. I'm
That's what-
proposing that we call that existing 715 house the tertiary dwelling. And I'm proposing that we make the garage office our primary dwelling.
So you're not building a house?
You're converting a
We're
garage.
converting, we're gonna.
No,
build
you're not
building
building a
permit.
house.
No, it's all what's right
Well,
there.
then that's
We're just
different
changing
then.
it, we're putting a kitchen in it, that's all.
Yeah, but that's fine. What's wrong with that?
It's just that
It's
it
kind
doesn't
of
meet the
dumb. It
size
sounds kind of
requirements.
dumb to me with that big, huge lot, but whatever.
Go ahead.
You're missing.
So
I'm missing it? I'm sorry, Linda.
And-
I'm just,
All right,
sorry.
there's the public, there's the board.
What am I missing?
Let's be a little clear here about who, thank you.
I know I'm missing work. Go ahead.
one of the 3 dwelling units, which is assuming there's going to be one on Lot B, so one of the
Yeah.
3 should be 650 square feet or less, unless you grant a special permit for the 650 square feet to be exceeded. So he's already said they're not willing to restrict the new dwelling unit on Lot B to 650. So that only leaves the existing already constructed house on Lot A and the existing building that's not a house that they want to convert. So if you grant the waiver, then none of the 3 will meet the tertiary dwelling standard, and they'll all far exceed it.
It's
Okay.
flo-
Okay, but
Nat, excuse me, it's floor area ratio, so you have to double those numbers. It's 1628, and that's 14 something. I mean, it's only 1260, but
Yeah, but roughly,
it's
yeah,
roughly
you're right.
double.
You're right.
It's
That's
not, it's, you're getting ground cover and floor area ratio mixed up. The tertiary is floor area. So you can only have one floor, 650 square feet.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad everybody went first.
You want to sit next to Linda?
But I'm actually more inclined to agree with Joe. Looking at that, I mean, this is a unique situation because there's already pre-existing dwellings. However, we do have Lot B that has not yet to be built. So if we throw out proportions, 80% of, the primary, for a secondary, and you put in the tertiary of 650, I actually think you would be better served to build a larger house on Lot B, use the garage office of the 814 as the tertiary, use the 1430 for the secondary, and then I think you would meet all concerns. How do we get to that means? I'm not really sure from a legal standpoint, but that's what I think that it's going to be pretty hard to
Because they want to take, the 815, they want it to be.
yeah, go from,
Right.
we're having issues with extending that 650 to the 800 or 850. I think, and what I do get that this is a pre-existing building, and it's a unique situation, but if we had 3 buildings here already constructed, it would be a different conversation, but we have 2, and we still have to build the 3rd one, so I think we have a little flexibility with that.
Yeah, what if we, I just thought of something, what if we, and we're only proposing to have a single bedroom in that 814? I mean, what if the board limited it to bedrooms or something? To make sure, neither one of these have without further relief from the board. In other words, neither one has hang on, let me finish here. Neither one, sorry, neither one has neither one of these structures has a basement, just crawl space. I mean, that's just an idea I had to limit the size of it, but allow a bedroom to be upstairs as opposed to keeping the 814 and having the bedroom downstairs. Right, because that's what you're proposing.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, even though these are multiple houses, they're not multi-family, and the planning board cannot regulate the interior of a single-family house, so you
Correct.
cannot limit the bedrooms through a condition.
Right.
I mean, I'm just stuck on, the 650, we go a little bit because it's existing,
Yeah,
but
that's
when
where
it's
I was.
really build-out's gonna be double at the least, I see that as a big impediment.
Yeah. Steve?
I think this horse has been beat. I'm good.
Agreed. Anything else from the board? Leslie? Holly? Public hearing's open at this point.
Public hearing's
Chomping at
open.
the bit.
Here I am. This structure, this, whatever he's calling it up there, people did sleep in it.
Where?
That. Now, probably not now,
I don't,
new owners, okay?
yeah. So,
It is 814 square feet. It doesn't have a second floor, really, at this time.
right.
I didn't see the HDC approval, so I don't know how tall it is. I know some of the other changes they were making on the main house. If it was left alone as a one-story ranch, and it's listed as a ranch, it's listed as 1 story, it's listed as total bedrooms 1, total bathrooms 1, and it is basically a ranch, because Barry stuck 2 buildings together when he built it back in the 70s.
Which one are you talking about?
That one.
I think you might be talking about the other one, because the garage, I think, is like a gambrel. I'm pretty sure I was over there.
It wasn't a gambrel to begin with.
All right, well,
So
I'm
I don't
telling
know
you,
if that's what went
it's
through
not
the
one story. I
HDC.
mean, it's
That may have been
up
what
there.
went through HDC. So if they did something to it, that wasn't what Barry built. Barry built a shop for himself, and there's a huge barn. If that's the barn, that's a big building.
I think it's the barn. That's
Okay.
what I think it
If it's
is.
the barn, as opposed to the little shop that Barry built, which was 1 story, this is not listing that as 2 story. This is listing it as, whatever this building is listing at 1 story. So I don't know what's happened out there.
Nothing's happened. It's like a garage. It's like a barn. And they want to create a second, they want it to be a house.
Barry had a
They want to put a
big-
second floor on it.
Barry
That's all.
built a shop, and behind the shop, he built a big barn. If this is the barn, that's a massive building.
An 814 square
And I
foot
don't,
massive
I don't
building?
see personally why, I don't mind if they have a tertiary. I don't mind if they have 2 on the main lot, where the Barry's house was. But I have a big problem with 3 big structures. The driveway, I gave the map to Holly already. The driveway was there way before, and I've been there since '83. That driveway, the horseshoe, the double dip under the south pasture lane was there way before 1998. It was there when I moved in, built my house. So I think the access for the third lot, or the third dwelling is fine off of south pasture. I have a major problem with 3 huge buildings.
There's gonna be, all right.
All right.
And I don't care what lots they're on,
Yeah,
I don't
Mr.
care.
Chairman, sorry, I keep.
Because you have a
This
tertiary,
is a little
is a
different.
tertiary,
Yeah, I
is
know.
a
You're
tertiary.
right.
Thank you.
You're
And
right.
I don't mind exceeding tertiary
Sure.
to some extent, I've always been in favor of that. But 3 big houses with 2 stories, not on that lot, not on the corner lot. And I think that's excessive, frankly.
All right,
I think you've
hold
got
on.
enough guidance, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
just,
so. I'm gonna, you know,
all right.
cut you guys loose because this is going nowhere. So, but if I may, quickly,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, there's going to be 3 big structures on there no matter what. And we're not taking down the garage that exists. So we can create it into a dwelling, and it's going to be what it is right now with a kitchen in it, or we can keep it a garage and then put a 550, which is what our ground cover is left, tertiary on it. I mean,
That's small.
Can we stop the,
it's
all right.
more, it's more buildings though.
All right.
Yeah,
This
but I
is,
might
de-
have more buildings, frankly.
do me a favor. When it comes to the public, I really don't allow this back and
Yeah,
forth
I know.
I'm
dialogue.
just saying,
So,
I
come on.
don't mind that.
Thank you.
I don't mind 3 on the lot, 1 650.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, can we continue to October so I can see if it's possible to have that 814 be the tertiary?
2 seconds. Holly, did you have something?
I just wanted to mention why the staff report indicated the possible re-advertising. It was mostly because of this. I assumed it was a error on Bracken's part because that driveway is more down that way.
Oh, okay.
But again, I didn't want to assume completely, so.
Yeah, so I should have called you about that.
Okay. The public hearing's still open on this. Did anyone else want to comment on this? The applicant's desire is to continue to our October meeting at this point, and I think there's some prudence there. So, board members, I'd accept a motion at this point to continue.
I'll move to continue to the October meeting.
I'll
Do I hear it?
second.
Thank you. Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That was worse than NAR stuff.
All right, stop. Harbor Fuel, yeah. Harbor Fuel Oil Corp., Tank Farm, 11 Industry Road.
Hey, I'm gonna go out and talk on the phone.
Stop, please.
Hey, Dave.
Dave, how are you this afternoon? Good, thank you.
Representing the applicant is,
Dave Fredericks and Ken Gullickson.
do we have a mic? Ken, you speaking or Dave Donald is speaking? 'Cause we don't have a
I'll
microphone
start
for
and
you.
we'll share if he has something to
Okay.
add.
Let it, Nat had to leave, so we're gonna activate a alternate. An alternate. Looks like we have 1 alternate.
The alternate.
At the alternate. So Steve, I guess you're on it.
Did you comment on this? Yeah, but did,
But not as a,
Excuse me.
but not as a,
No, I was just curious.
yeah, but you sat on the board. You didn't act as a member of the public or recuse yourself from this.
No, no, I
No,
said, yes.
he's a
I
member
just
of the
didn't know
board.
if I wasn't actually active on it.
Okay, you well,
If it comes up again, do we do that? I know at the HCC, it's
Yeah.
the same board.
the other 2 would have to watch the tape, and I believe Carl is gonna watch the tape.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to keep track of my own notes, so I knew if it came up. Thank you, sorry for the
What's going
interruption.
on at the site here? Okay, Dave, guys, we continued it for Ed?
Continued it for me? Oh, from Monday night?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah, we're waiting for you.
it's all you.
for you.
I would suggest we go to the second slide on our, it just simply shows what we're proposing.
Unfortunately, I don't know why it was the way.
Oh, is it?
It's fine on my screen, but as soon as I put it up there,
We have a full-size sheet if that helps.
Holly, can you reduce the size of
Yeah,
it?
either
Like
try
that?
reducing or enlarging, see if that changes.
Probably a resolution problem with it.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, so if it got
Changing the
smaller
scale
maybe?
may help.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, that's good.
It's easier to read.
What's simpler?
I'm just trying to get it to load, and the Wi-Fi in the building's really slow. I got a black screen.
2 weeks.
Well, it's slow, but it works.
I'm more tired now than I was when I worked 80 hours a week.
No, he's recused. Yeah, he's got a little conflict of interest there.
That's all, it's just a resolution issue. It's fine.
Yeah, it won't load on here either.
Oh, wait, open my break. Give it some time.
Just the contract.
Oh, that's a little better. Like a Monet. All right, go for it.
So we had received this morning, Holly forwarded over Mr. Pesci's letter. We'd gone through the letter. As everyone knows, our engineer is still slightly under the weather, but I had met with him from about 10 to 12. We did not see anything raised in Mr. Pesci's letter that we didn't think we could work through with him. We thought they were all great suggestions, some of which you folks had brought up as well, things like operating manuals, where they might, when they would take place, what role would DEP play related to various clean water issues. The issues that he brought up related to groundwater improvement, oil water separation, some of the other ancillary systems all seemed appropriate to us. So I don't know if you'd like to go through his, but we believe that we can work out those issues with your office and with staff.
Ed?
So again, Ed Pesci of Pesci Engineering. I received these plans last Friday, and I realized that they were part of a project that's been going on for some time. So my report that you all received today has a number of technical things. I think Mr. Fredericks is right that I'm fairly confident that whatever I bring up I brought up technically from an engineering point of view can be resolved between the technical staff. There is a couple of things that I always try to bring up and discuss. I want to point out that they still need, I believe, to speak to the fire department, consult with the fire department. I believe what they've designed is adequate, but I want them to document that with the fire department. The second thing is, I did not get the full application package, but there is implied with the set that I got a 2 parking space waiver that they've requested. So the board would have to take action on that. I've asked for some additional information on the site plans. Sounds like Mr. Fredericks and company and his engineer would have no problem with the majority of the documentation that I've asked for. There's some site grading and some drainage calculations that need to be provided. Again, I believe that's in process, and that's just not provided yet, so the full information was not available, but I think the board has the overall understanding of the site plan. I think, based on what I've understood with the entire site, this is really a big net benefit for the community, for the town in general, by trying to relocate bulk fuel storage from downtown to someplace where it's more appropriate in the community. So I certainly recognize that. There are no major showstoppers, in my opinion, other than the couple items that for your consideration. And I believe we could continue to work through those items on our own time and with staff support.
Jake? Ken? Dave wants it.
Dave Fredericks again. I would, to your point about the fire department, I would suggest, we'd met with the fire department. They've been some changes there, but what our plan here was to get plan in front of you folks, and step 2, we'll be meeting with first our local fire department and eventually the state fire marshal as well. That's part of a process that you go through, and eventually you're after licenses and agreements from both. There'll be presentations and things that we need to do to get a license from the town, and that would come from the selectmen. There's a process in front of DEP related to stormwater management. All of that starts, though, with this plan and an understanding of what the site looks like. And so the need to move this forward is driven by this first step in the process.
Mr. Chairman, I want to mention one other thing, excuse me, Madam Chairman. One other thing that I would offer is not necessarily technical in as regards to my landscaping comment, and it sounds like they understood that certainly. The landscaping, the proposed Leland cypress on the west side of the site may or may not be needed there, but it's probably more appropriate, and my recommendation was to put it on the opposite side, and the north side, so it's screened from the main road, even though that it's not, a terribly visible road to the general public, other than folks that are involved in industrial operations on that road. Part of the reason is that they show on the plan they're going to leave a 30-foot vegetative buffer up to Proprietor's Road. So additional vegetation there might be better spent where they're not putting any vegetation, where they're not putting any screening. And that's the reason I meant that, and I wanted to make sure the board saw that for your consideration.
We did notice that comment, and back to our point about, I think, working it out with staff, we're fine with the suggestion. I think I have to get out there and visually see the site to be able to respond. I didn't have time before the meeting to just, but it didn't seem inappropriate. We're happy to use reasonable screening to make sure that we don't have any unreal due impact on people's, visibility to the area.
To you, Madam Chair. Just a question, Dave. As far as security, we just briefly dwelled on that subject on Monday. We talked about the safety and the fire department and getting a response with that. But all I know right now is we have some gates. Are there any film, cameras? Are there any man security? Is there a response coordination with the police department? Any plan with that?
So it's interesting in how much you might want to put in an application, but, so on one end, you don't want to broadcast everything. But I would start with, there is a chain link fence around the entire site, that there are gates that don't allow you past. If you look closely at the plan, what you notice is if you come in off of New South Road and head down Industry Way and you take a right onto the property, there's a gate there, and that gate is meant to be closed. It's meant to be under control. The exit gate is the same. The idea there is that's the first line of defense. There'll certainly be lighting that is targeted towards the security issues, which will be unique on the property. There'll certainly be cameras. How those will be monitored and what the response would be, I'd rather not make promises in public more than I need to. But we really thought a lot about the security of the site. That's why the gates are where they are.
Thank you.
There.
Yeah, so essentially what you need this board to do is, in order to go before the rest of these regulatory boards, you need us to essentially say, we're good with where you're at the moment, but as time now moves on, you may be coming back for modifications based upon what maybe the fire department's going to say, DEP is going to say. Is that just a correct analysis?
That is true. You need to start with a footprint and with an understanding of the site. And candidly, your footprint is going to drive most of the engineering. And if for some reason there were significant issues we hadn't considered, we want to know those now before we moved into that next phase.
And the reason why I bring that up is, I've heard some good points from this board so far, but there's a certain point where we may get into micromanaging issues that aren't quite ready to be addressed yet. And they may be addressed from a different regulatory agency at a much higher level. So I think that's just something that this board needs to be cognizant of as well, too, that you may well be coming back before us, and there are certainly other boards that are going to have higher standards than we do.
There will certainly be, expectations of, the example having to do with the SPC's plan and what they're going to require for maintenance of a system, monitoring of a system, training of employees. You're going to have the same thing, I'm sure, from the related to the fire safety issues, and those will become significant documents that develop, once we move into the next phase by people who have that expertise, candidly. One of the reasons we're multidisciplined and are not sitting at the table, but we have a fire engineer and we have people who specialize in SPCC, and we have there's about 9 members to the team that all have very much expertise that aren't sitting here because we're not at that phase yet.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? This is a public hearing. Anybody in the public want to talk? Okay.
Got to make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Make a
What's your
motion at
pleasure?
this point that we approve this, subject to minor modifications that may have to come through Mr. Pesci or from staff in order to accomplish the final analysis of what this
All right,
project
are you
needs to
hearing
bring
the motion
forth.
here?
Is that adequate?
it
Basically,
again.
what I'm saying to you at this point is that I'm making a motion to approve the project at this point, subject to very minor modifications that you or Mr. Pesci may have to come up with in order to accomplish the end goal of this project.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually thought I'd do it in Sage better today, but not so
Let me get Matt. Okay, True Down, Wood to Go, LLC, 21 Pilgrim Road.
Right, this is huge. Are we done now?
No.
We don't know. We're on to Pilgrim now, right?
Yes.
Okay. No, I'm not retired yet, so just hang in there. Let me get back to work here. Okay. I like this little thing here we're doing. Don't agree, I should take the whole.
All right, stop.
Yeah.
Let's do it in connection separate. I have to reload the connection. Okey-dokey. Representing the app?
Oh, good. It's a new thing.
Stop. Do it again in the microphone.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo and Sophie Metz. We've prepared some revised materials for your consideration, and Sophie was going to give a brief overview, and then I'll get into the technical details.
So, I not only work for the developer who's looking to do this, but I also did the project for the Levines, who own the property that immediately adjoins this to the north. And so I had approached the developer when he started doing this because my clients obviously cared what was going to be happening there. And so I apologize that I think you guys saw on the last time an underlayment of what was effectively my push, like my plea to the developer to treat this only as 3 lots versus the 5 that he had been considering. So, Art doing what he does, but, sort of reworks it in multiple ways, and I was kind of pleading, let's not create a little mini cul-de-sac in there and have a lot of parcels. So because the thought, in my mind, Pilgrim Road, which remains kind of one of these rural roads that's still really close to town, the idea being how could we keep the rhythm or the cadence of the way the houses operate on the street, and then if it has to be subdivided, give the appearance that it's really just a little rural driveway going back to what could, for all intents and purposes, be just a single house in the back there. So what happened, I guess, at the last meeting, which to me seems great, is that you guys said, well, why don't you don't have to do a full road, you could do like a 16-foot wide shell drive back there, which in my mind is wonderful, because then the lot that would be on the street, lot 125, could read as the normal street frontage going down that road, feeding to 2 lots in the back. I read all of the letters from the neighbors, and I absolutely understand why they are furious about the small lot that was developed on the front, because that project was built very close to the street.
Yeah.
They completely maxed out their ground cover. It's run like a rental. Understandably, everybody has the right to do what they need to do. But not only is the road extremely narrow there, but they created no on-site parking for not only the people renting it, but anybody servicing it, or, so we can't really undo that situation. But, so what Art has drawn now, and what we're hoping that you guys will consider, is that we would have what would read as a normal.
Hold on.
Oh.
If he leaves the room, he can't sit. Do you want to see how long he's going to be out for? Before he starts chatting with somebody out there?
Not, you'll have to activate them.
Yeah.
Right, which,
I don't want him coming back in the middle of this.
Steve Sauer.
No, this is a
It's a subdivision.
subdivision.
So can't activate multiple.
Oh, you're right, thank you, sorry.
That's right.
But that only requires,
I don't want him getting tied up out there.
yeah, only requires a vote of 3 on the board. Doesn't require a supermajority.
Potentially, could have been.
That's the question.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't recall, is the rear lot subdivision a special permit or that's a?
All right, we can start again.
Okay, so the thought at lot 125 that we would absolutely not want to do what was done on the smaller, we would want to not only have on-site parking, but push the house much further back from the road than that house was. I know you guys had asked potentially that the driveway for that lot, that create sort of what I would call a cul-de-sac, that their driveway entrance would be in through this shared driveway. Why I feel like that is, I don't know if the word is unfair, I'm sorry, I've never went to one of these meetings before, but that if you have, they have twice the frontage of what that small lot would have, and we've also wrote into our application to say we're even willing to have that they would never have a guest house, so we could absorb 3 normal parking, 3 cars basically, into our lot, which, the smaller one didn't do. My fear is that if you even force us to put the driveway on the inside, people are lazy. They would just end up parking parallel on Pilgrim anyway, completely defeating the purpose. So then we'd have cars everywhere. We'd have them on the road, on the street, because, we know that people go the shortest distance. So the idea that you would own 100 feet on a road and you're not allowed to park on it seems to me like it could backfire. But I do understand why the neighbors are concerned. But we're really hopeful that this proposal here would be the least offensive to the neighborhood, the most graceful, and really disguise that it's being subdivided into 3 oversized lots is my hope that you would consider that.
Yes, thanks, Sophie. I would just like to go over the technical changes that we made from the first meeting, which mainly are, the light red line is the new subdivision line. This had been a hammerhead. I took the direction of the board to basically reduce the area of the paper road to the maximum extent possible. So I took this from the 40-foot width down to a 25-foot width. It was difficult to go too much narrower in order to still have some room for small drainage swales and utilities along there. So that was what I felt was the minimum width that we really could make work there. And then by doing that, I couldn't get the frontage without the jogs on the turn and tee, and I also thought that this was more in keeping with the direction of what the board has been approving more recently in reduction. So we went to a reduced turning circle, and then I used the bylaw provision to allow a 30% reduction of these frontages from 50 to, I think, 35.29 feet here and here. So I think that was very much in keeping with the direction that I received from the board. The other thing that we've done is to, in the letter, agree that there will be no tertiary dwellings on any of the lots and no secondary dwelling on this lot. So we've now gone, and then further, I included a proof plan. Perhaps we could just go to the next page in the packet very quickly.
It's before that one.
Oh, up one then. So here, this here was what we had worked up as a sort of ultimate potential for a fully conforming 40-foot layout that met your standards, 5,000 square foot lots, in theory, 15 dwelling units. And so now if we could go back, please, to the actual proposed plan. What you have here is a total of 5 instead of 15 in terms of dwelling units, 2, 2, and 1. And then in terms of lot size compared to the 5,000, you can see that we're at 7,868, 12,886, and 15,400. So, very much oversized lots. And the additional concern with Pilgrim Road, I did the additional graphic. The board had asked sort of where was, if we could just scroll down, where was Cliff Road in relation to Locust, and then the end of Pilgrim Road. You've got about 1,600 linear feet there. And what we've agreed to would be a condition that within 2 months of the decision, we would grade that road. And then prior to the issuance of certificates of occupancy for each of the lots, we would also grade the road. with that, I think that we hope that we've met all of the concerns. Again, fairly low density in relation to some of the surrounding area. And we'd be happy to try to address additional questions or concerns that the board may have.
Joe?
Yeah, I generally like the layout. I think it's fine. And my major concern is that for the grading of the lots and the ability for the developer to maintain like erosion control and things that we were talking about in the mill, whatever it was. Woodland Hill, so that you would have some either homeowners association or agreement with the people that purchase the lots, that you'd be able to go back in and stabilize the erosion, because it seems to me most of the time, that the lots in the back fall off. They're probably going to be quite a bit of fill, would be my guess.
The lots haven't been designed, the back, if I may, Madam
Yep.
Chair, the back lots haven't been designed. The neighbor has some retaining walls that are installed sort of along here.
Right.
You get thick, dense vegetation back in here.
You get a wetland back in that.
The wetland is way up in here, and I did plot the 100-foot buffer zone,
Right.
as I mentioned at the last meeting, does fall onto the property, but certainly not the 50 or the 25, which wouldn't allow grading.
Well, I'm not to interrupt, but I will interrupt, that if you just have an agreement that you can maintain it if it's necessary, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
The grade is what's good engineering practice. Then the only other thing I thought of was I would rather see that you pave across your lot and maybe down to the entrance of the Westmore, something like that. I'd rather see it paved than graded, regraded. And I'd rather see some pavement and sort of try to connect down to, what do you call it?
Pilgrim Court, the other way?
Well, yeah, down towards Pilgrim Court where it's paved. So you'd be within 400 or 500 feet of that, and then as these other people come and we can patchwork that in. Sure.
So, when it is a road like that, and then there are obviously so many other people who live on this road,
Right.
I would imagine that they don't, like my clients, for example, love that it's a shell road, and bought and built there 2 years ago, and that's one of the reasons why they picked that road. So how do you guys deal with it? You can mandate a road being
It's not a
paved?
town road.
Oh, but if like the majority of the people on that street want it, then you would do it? But how can we force our clients to?
I said
No.
that's what I'd like to see, that doing it would be the applicant's problem. I mean, I would think that you have rights in the road to do things that normally are done for a road. And one of those things is paving. Now, I'm not an attorney, but I think you'd have the right to do that. I said that's something I'd like to see. I'm not saying that's
Okay.
what I like. I'm not saying that's necessarily right or
Okay.
that it's the best thing. Those are the only two comments I have.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Go for it.
Maybe we should hear from all your board members, and I can address everyone if that's okay. Or how
The only question I had, nobody else has anything at the moment, was that you said you were gonna give a larger setback on that little lot. It's not actually on here, you have the standard setback on here.
If you guys require that, but I'm the person designing it, so, I mean, I know me saying that doesn't mean anything, but if you were to require that as part of it, we would be willing to do that. To make sure it sits back 5 feet further.
Yeah, 125. They said in their letter that they were gonna have a greater than the, what is it, a 20-foot setback out there? 10,
Yeah,
it's
so
R1.
if you needed to up it to 15
Yeah.
to be comfortable.
She's offering that. Yeah, it's
Yes.
R1.
Yeah.
So it's 10?
Doesn't that help
If it's on the corner, you got the,
The 10 on both,
yeah.
right, so I should have drawn the 10 here.
What's it on the corner? Oh, Paul Jones.
Yeah, what's on the corner?
No, it would be on the corner of that new proposed road, I think is the point.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you're sort of
yeah.
already getting that
Oh.
larger setback here.
But you were talking about a setback from,
No, I just meant
Pilgrim.
we would never put the houses close up as the people have done with a small lot.
I didn't know if you wanted to put that in a condition.
If they're offering it, sure, but just to clarify, the current setback would be 10 from Pilgrim,
Right,
10
10
from the
from the
new
road.
road.
Yep.
So if they're offering 15, is it 15 from both?
From Pilgrim.
Or just from
Just Pilgrim.
Just pull them out then.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Barry?
So, two things. Just given the response to two letters in here that kind of talk about Pilgrim Road and don't necessarily correspond to what you just said about people just want it a certain way. I'm seeing two letters in here from individuals that saying they think Pilgrim Road really is not well maintained or addressed. And I think that's something that the board needs to be cognizant of. I have to agree with Joe. I would rather see you guys, instead of having to grade this thing on 4 separate occasions, to start thinking about, I'd rather see you guys start putting some pavement in. I would really appreciate that happening. One thing I did mention at the Monday night meeting that I think that would be inherent upon you doing that, and we've done this with other things that have come before us at this point, is to have you guys reach out to the rest of the neighborhood and say, we're doing this. We are going to do this. This is an opportunity for you to join us, and in doing so, you may be able to reduce some of the cost as well too by doing additional pavement onto that roadway system. I think that needs to be done in one way, shape, form, or another. The other thing is, whenever we're at this level again, I'm not keen on that additional driveway sitting there off of 125. I would rather see it I'd rather see the driveway take its shape off the new roadway system that you're creating internally within the subdivision. That way, everything falls within that area. I'm just really, I think that makes more sense in the long run. I'm a little reticent to want to buy into, well, we really shouldn't do that because people get lazy. I have a real problem with that one. And that's where a neighborhood can say, okay, we don't like that, and as a neighborhood, we're going to enforce the fact that if people think they should be parking on Pilgrim Way, let's get that fixed as well. So those are my two things. I'm really, until those things start getting looked at, I'm not sure I'm 100% in favor of this where it stands at the moment. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I don't have an issue with the plan as it's laid out right now. I would reserve comment to hear from the neighbors and how they feel about the road, because I think when you approach the road, something like this, I'm familiar with the neighborhood, half the people might want the dirt road, they don't want it to be well-traveled. As soon as you pave it, it becomes a thoroughfare. So I'd like to hear from the neighbors and their comments about that. But in principle, I like the new design that you made, Art.
Let me just say one quick before I have to leave.
You're leaving?
I'm in like a major problem. I have to leave this meeting at some point before the next thing. All right. There's sewer in this road. This is one of those odd situations where we have like stuff in a road. It's been there for years, like First Way, kinda. It's a mess, but there's like stuff in it. You can't just pave it.
Right.
There's probably clay tile, or not clay tile, but like issues.
Is Granby
Joe.
sewer?
No, it's force main.
Yeah.
Force main with today's products or yesterday's products? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
7.
Well, that's not bad. Okay. What I'm getting at is it isn't just slap some asphalt and have a good day. This is engineering and blah, 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 blah. It's a private road. I mean, it's not like 3 houses. This is how we used to do things back in the day with 1 second dwelling, and all of a sudden we're doing all this work. I think it's more of a homeowner. If this was a private road built recently, it would be a homeowners association. It would be different. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know this is your first meeting, but this is what happens when these old things pop up. R1, all kinds of development that's been sort of waiting to happen, and no one really wants it fixed, but everybody's complaining about its condition, but they really don't want it to be fixed sometimes. So it's difficult. I like the plan, this new plan. I think it's good. You've given up a lot. The lots are huge compared to what could happen. You could do a road in there and make 5 or 6 lots, whatever the proof point was. The road condition is almost a secondary issue. Okay, that road isn't gonna be any worse with these than it is now. I think that there should be a maintenance plan by the neighbors that is agreed upon without it being paved or required to be paved by one project. That's been the same as it was when the Congdons lived up there.
Okay.
So, I'm just saying, you know what I mean? So,
Any of the board comments at the moment?
I got one more.
Okay.
When it comes to the paving, and some neighbors want to keep it a rutted road and make it hard to pass and all that. Well, you know, I think we have to have the intestinal fortitude here to say, it ought to be paved. There ought to be a good passage. You know, I mean, everybody wants people to go slow in the rutted roads, but it's not really a good idea for safety or anything else. So I'd like the idea of some paving, yeah. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else? Barry?
Just real quickly, listening to Matt, you know, I realize with other associations that have been out there that have been formed, they've come together collectively to try to figure out what works best for the neighborhood. Sometimes it is nothing more than a roadway maintenance plan where they go out and they all pitch together to get it graded every so often. And to Joe's case, yeah, that's one of the primary functions that this board is charged with is roadway that we need to keep looking at. So as much as a neighborhood may say, oh, we like it rutted up, I've seen neighborhoods where, you know, they're not doing anything for the community by keeping it in a condition that is just totally out of control. So that's kind of somehow what I'm asking for you guys to do is be the tip of the spear here and try to work with the rest of the neighborhood and come back to this board and let us know what the thought process is here. And like I said, we've done this with other subdivisions that have come before us before, where we have identified problems with the roadway system, and there has been resolution taken care of on a neighborhood level. So I think before I'm ready to say yes to anything here, I would really like you guys to put your best foot forward on that one. Not saying you're going to get an answer at this point, but nothing's happened so far. So this is an opportunity for this board to try to begin to make something happen that would be mutually beneficial for the entire neighborhood and Nantucket at large. Thank you.
Ed?
Final thing I wanted to add to the board, I looked at this project a week ago, provided comments a week ago to Art, and I wanted to make note that he's addressed every single of my previous comments and in the upper left, and I would ask that you consider this as a condition of approval, that all the structures, all the proposed dwellings have downspouts and gutters connected to a subsurface infiltration system to not create an additional runoff component out to Pilgrim Road. Okay.
I just want to say that I was driving this bus the other day about narrowing the entrance and restricting the front lot, no tertiary dwellings and whatnot. And grading more than they had originally planned, which was only twice. I am perfectly happy with this subdivision as it sits. If the neighbors all want to get it together out there and they want to pave their private road, they can get together and pave their private road. I'm not going to make this subdivision pave Pilgrim Road, because there are other people down further that didn't want it paved. So they need to all get together and figure out how they want to deal with Pilgrim Road. If they're willing to grade it within 2 months of this getting filed, and they're willing to grade it before the COs are issued on these 3 lots, and then they all get together and grade, like Peter's graded it before on his own, and I'm sure these guys are going to want it graded, especially down the Westchester end is horrible during the winter. I'm perfectly satisfied with that compared to all the things that they've acceded to. So, Leslie?
Yeah, I really do. I just want to set the record straight. I, as one on this board, haven't asked them to pave all of Pilgrim Road. That is a fallacy and incorrect.
Well, what are we paving?
You're not listening. All I'm saying to you is and I don't think Joe would do that either, because you know what? There has to be a rational nexus here in the situation. But what we are asking is to start somewhere at this point. And I even said afterwards, after listening, that a grading plan that the that all the residents could get behind would be another option that I think would work well, and we have certainly done that before the board. But I just want to correct that statement.
If we had a homeowners association that encompassed the whole strip, and I don't know how many, maybe 20, 30 homeowners on this group, now it's going to be more with the 3 lots
Sorry,
here.
thank you, Leslie.
So I don't agree with this at all, on this. I agree with the grading plan. They'll have to get together after he gets his COs and maintain this road. I don't know if Leslie can come up with language that requires these 3 to maintain the road. But I think beyond that, you're gonna have to get together with Peter and some of the other guys that are out here. I'm gonna open the public hearing. Before you do.
She wants to comment. I want one more comment. No, ladies first.
Don't fight over it.
Can we take a look at the 5-lot plan again?
Can I interrupt, please, for a minute? Now, can we, I have to leave, okay? I gotta leave. Like, this is ugly, okay?
And
I
understand.
have got to leave this meeting. This wasn't supposed to be all day.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
I mean, Steve, don't leave. I just got to. I'm sorry, Linda.
All right.
Business, he has a
He
job.
can't sit,
can't
Steve
just
cannot
sit.
sit on this.
Yes, he
Well, it's
No, he
a,
cannot.
this is
It's
a regular.
subdivision. He can sit on the next one.
No, I understand Steve can't sit on it, but
Right.
this will continue to the next meeting. And he mulled.
You can mull it in the next meeting.
Right,
He can.
right. So let's
Leslie,
just-
can we
let's
just rope it back in here, please? We're running really late. Leslie, can you want to have something, we want to look at the other one, the
I just had a
5-lot?
quick question about that, which are answered, just a clarification. So, I think for the board to consider roadway improvements to Pilgrim Road at some level is totally appropriate. I mean, they have shown a 5-lot plan that they could have come in with. They have voluntarily reduced that to 3 lots. They have also, I think I heard them say at the beginning, voluntarily restricted all of the lots to no tertiary dwelling.
Yeah.
That's in the letter I wrote.
Okay, and then one of the lots to only
125.
single dwelling?
That's correct.
125.
So, they voluntarily given up quite a bit there. On the flip side of that, even if this were an A&R, the planning board would be looking to see if the road was of adequate width, grade, and construction for the density and the number of lots being proposed. So you should certainly look at that. Before we move on, I just want to sort of go over the list that I have so we don't all forget it before the next meeting. So I talked about tertiary dwelling, the second dwelling. Joe had brought up something about erosion,
Some kind of an agreement.
with the owner of lot 4, or
Well, no,
not lot 4, whatever that lot is on the plan.
That the developer maintains some kind of control
Mhm.
to be able to mitigate any erosion. I don't care what it is, an agreement, a homeowners association,
There's a lot of
But-
grade changing going on in here to get these houses
but
in here.
but something, so that we don't have Ed coming back and say, well, Mr. Beauregard bought the lot, and he's not gonna do anything.
Okay.
I don't want that to happen again.
All right. Another thing, lot 125,
15 feet off.
15 feet
Pilgrim.
front yard setback.
Off of
lot-
Pilgrim.
Off Pilgrim, yeah. Lot 125, interior access only from the new road. To include as a condition the drainage wording about the structures being connected to downspouts and subsurface infiltration systems. And then they do need to come up with a roadway name, and that could be provided on the final plans, whatever that is. I just want to bring that up.
Okay. Is that it from the board right now?
Yeah, I'm done.
This isn't a public hearing, so I don't have to open it to the public, correct?
That's a public hearing.
It's public hearing.
I keep going subdivision, not subdivision. Special permit, not special permit. Okay, this is open to the public. We have some letters which we've read. Anybody in the audience like to speak to this issue? I don't see any. Where are we? It seems like we're split 2-2.
Well,
I'll make a motion to
yeah,
close the
I'd
public
like them
hearing.
I'd like them to look into
No?
paving.
I'm gonna
To
hold
at least
that
talk to the neighbors and get a consensus of it. I mean, up and down the road.
I don't wanna make it a
like to
condition
see some
for this,
paving.
though.
In general, I'm not against subdivision.
right, if I may, paving the road is a whole nother project. It's designing, it's drainage, it's wetlands along there. No, please, it's beyond the scope for a subdivision that, if we were doing the 5-lot subdivision, asking for tertiaries, going the whole 9 yards, 15 dwellings, I would agree. I would think that then that would be justified. I think that, looking at, that's why this particular applicant has gone to the oversized lots, has voluntarily agreed to a much, much lower density. Your traffic generation, all of those things, this lot as it is right now, say you didn't do anything, could have 3 dwellings. So after this proposed division, it's only 5. And so in terms of trip generation and impact to the road, I don't think that it warrants having to go to that sort of full-scale improvement. And then the problem, of course, as I think you well know, is putting piecemeal pavement in isn't a good solution. You go from a paved to a dirt to a paved, it breaks apart at the end. So we're either talking about going all the way back to Pilgrim Court or all the way out to Cliff Road, which, again, I don't think is warranted for the density of the proposed subdivision. Because then we would be into stormwater management standards. It would be much, greater of scope than I think that a 3-lot, subdivision warrants. In terms then of not going to pavement, as Mr. Rector suggested, and looking at trying to, come up with a sort of overall group neighborhood plan, I think we're already heading in that direction. We're looking at, grading the road, fixing it voluntarily at least 4 times. And you already have in the letters from the abutters that they already gone around and tried to collect some funds. This neighborhood is now going to have 3 more, they're going to have 3 neighbors that are, potential contributors to this as well. The logistics of us as an applicant on this particular lot to try to go to everybody else and figure out what everybody else wants and whether someone else is going to pay, it's really difficult. I think that given that we've gone and voluntarily reduced that division, density so much that and just gone and given everything that the board has asked for and gonna grade the road, that to push for full road improvements wouldn't really be justified.
Barry?
Yeah, quickly. Leslie, looking at Pilgrim Road, do we see more of this coming into the future, or are we pretty much set with the way Pilgrim Road's
I'm
going to be?
looking at it now.
Well,
Just
keep in mind,
ballpark.
it's in a 5,000 square foot zoning district. There
Yeah.
are lots that are oversized. We haven't done an assessment of this area. It may be an area that you want to look at for a future rezoning
Okay.
to prevent this type of subdivision in the future. But I do think it is a bit burdensome for this applicant to have to take on major roadway improvements in Pilgrim Road. There are utilities in the road, there's sewer in the road, there's wetlands around there,
Yep.
there's all kinds of things to consider. And I think it might be more reasonable to, I like to see things tidied up and improved myself, but I think in this situation, maybe some conditions about grading. They've offered to do it within 2 months. I think maybe if they agree that it'll be graded, after each structure gets a certificate of occupancy, that would ensure some ongoing activity. It would help mitigate the impacts of all the building. That to me seems like a reasonable solution. And it's not lost on me that they've given up a lot of density that they could have come in back.
So, all right, I'm glad you said that. That helps. And I think that's something that this board, and I'd probably ask staff to start looking at the not too far future. I'm glad to hear you're willing to pull that driveway off of 125 into the internal.
That's not.
So you're not going to do that? Okay, because if, did I hear yes or no then?
Well, I heard that it came up as a condition, a possible condition. We're gonna have to accept a condition that's imposed by the board. Do we
Okay.
want to do
Well,
that?
that's-
No.
Right, but I wouldn't give up 15 feet on the front if you guys are still saying, the reason I was saying we would do that is so that we could
Pushing the house
push the house
back.
back, so now you want
If you push it back that far, they're gonna have a hard time with getting in from the other side. Why would they do that?
That was the point here, right, was to increase this setback
It's over there by
to
itself.
set that back. So again, I think that, you know,
We're carving up
we
a lot of the
also showed this distance here. This is 60 feet, so it's
Yeah.
really not, you know, and if we look at the aerial, if we could just slide down just a little bit,
looking at it
you know,
right
it's, there's other driveways that are closer, you know, between each other. I don't think that the main road and then one driveway right here, and of course, this is 2014, because we're still dealing with the
Right.
town system.
Yeah.
I would love to use the Google Earth, but then you don't have the parcels. So this is all developed now, and this is all developed. So,
I can see it.
you know, we truly feel, and in no way trying to be argumentative, that the more rural nature is maintained by having the two driveways, so that you don't have what looks like more of a subdivision. We were very much trying to have, you know, what is just a little driveway servicing the back two, and then it stands alone. And again, this lot is, it's not much different than, I mean, it's much bigger than this lot, but fronting on the road. So, you know, we do think that the better design, in keeping with the character of a more country, rural type nature, is the driveway that comes in from Pilgrim. So, again, it would be our preference to keep it that way, for
This is the
sure.
one that has the single dwelling unit.
And it only has one
Secondary,
dwelling
no
unit.
tertiary, no nothing.
So, you know, it would certainly be our hope, and then, in the same reason back for the pavement issue, you know, is trying to keep it country.
So I'm gonna, here's what I'm gonna just say at this point. I'm not, the pavement thing, let's let that go, in my book at least. Here's what I want from you though, which I think would be a good thing, is that you guys still need to be tasked with going out there and talking to the rest of the neighborhood. Okay? Academic of what happens here today. What I'd like you to do is consider doing that. And then, if you find the neighborhood is in general agreement to start doing that, come back before this board. I, for one, would be willing to waive a fee that you'd have to do to re-advertise and get this forward before you at this point. Stop with the 4 gradings that you're gonna do and work with the neighborhood to make something happen that would be beneficial in terms of a plan for the entire Pilgrim roadway. It's not conditional. It's not conditional. This is kind of more like, I'm hoping you'll do the right things here. See where I'm going?
Okay.
I mean, if I may, it's a bit of herding cats at that point.
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
and I feel like we're just getting spun around versus by agreeing to do the gradings.
Yeah.
And why don't, and I thought that Ms. Snell's suggestion was good, that if we were to tie the gradings to their certificates of occupancy per structure instead of per lot, then you're gonna get five gradings plus the original grading. That's 6 road maintenance activities to folks that haven't even been happening in some cases once a year.
Yeah.
Pools, I
And
mean,
we're,
pool, cabana,
and we're done.
house,
So
garage.
anytime they're gonna get a certificate of occupancy, they
Yeah.
pave the road, they grade the road.
That's-
And in that case, we're
15
controlling
structures.
our destiny versus trying to go to talk to all these people. I'm gonna come back to you.
I'm just saying to you that it wouldn't be a condition that you had to do it. I would not build that in as a condition. But we have done that before as a board, and it really has worked. Okay, we have. So, I'm just throwing that out to you as something I'd like you to think about, okay?
Okay, they've done it. I'll have to say it again. Now, are we okay with leaving that driveway on that single-family house on the road? So it doesn't look like it's part of the long driveway that goes to the other 2?
I'm okay with it.
Okay,
I'm fine with that.
okay. All right. No more public comment? Make a motion?
Close the public hearing, yes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in
Wait,
favor?
I'd like for discussion. One thing, I'm not gonna say anything.
This is just a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, I'll go along with that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, here, somebody make a motion vis-à-vis what, all the conditions that Leslie has.
But no, I'd like to ask Ed one question.
Sure.
How do you feel about the piece of new pavement?
I tend to agree with Art that the ends would get beat up. However, if it was part of an overall master plan, this was the fair share, it was across the frontage, that would be one thing, but you don't have that.
No. All right.
It doesn't hurt to try it. I mean, you could put cobble on each end to kind of control the damage to
Even
the
that
edge. But now, what is that? I think you're better off. I think what the applicant's offering, my recommendation is that they accept the offer that they're making on the grading.
Okay.
But if you could create some kind of master plan, consider that in the future.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
All right. So we want to make a motion vis-a-vis all the conditions that Leslie has and leaving the driveway for that one single house lot on Pilgrim.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay. We have a motion on the table made and seconded for discussion with all the conditions that Leslie has. What are we discussing? Okay, then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
There's two down and one to go. That's pretty much where we are.
Thanks, brother.
Pretty much where we are. I need to take a break for a second.
You only got one thing left.
This is not just one thing left.
Two comments?
Turn the page. Look what we have
What's that?
left.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm just getting up and I'm going downstairs for a second.
No, I thought it said that.
If you could fix what?
I did.
I could tell just by looking at how this thing was shaping out and who was here before us today.
I was a little surprised that
You say kind of what I would have expected, the longest for last, but I don't know if it really will be, because you went through some stuff I didn't expect to be long.
well, yeah, the National Grid thing, or the Harbor Fuel thing was pretty short.
Yeah, but that,
I understand, I'm just saying. It's a,
They addressed the comments I had.
no, but it's a pretty big project relative to tertiary.
I mean, we spent 20 minutes on a driveway.
I mean, I got those Friday and went, I have no time to look at this before Monday.
oh yeah.
And I didn't know if you were just gonna continue to next month. And then, all he told me was, hey, can you get it done by Thursday? Because we're punching it over to Thursday.
Keep you busy. You're right. You're right.
I'm just curious why wouldn't
Who knows? I think it
It's
maybe,
not allowed in that zone.
oh, that could be, that could be, yes.
I knew there was a reason, because I asked Art the same thing at the meeting. He, right, it's not allowed in that
Oh,
zone.
okay. It's not allowed in the zone. There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so just my own application.
That's okay, it's, and this is new enough, that rear lot process is new enough to where we're still, it's new to everyone.
Yeah, no, I'm not my fault.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
I thought it was good, it's just, I was curious why they wouldn't have, like, clearly.
They can't,
do the zone.
right. That's what I'm saying to you, it's a good plot, I think it'll work well, it's just us, everyone getting used to it now.
It would end up about the same, they would have to do gravel road, or shell road, and,
I think it's gonna trip people up is that secondary lots and a new provision that the secondary dwelling and the secondary lot has to meet tertiary requirements.
yeah.
So, like,
Yeah, no, that's a little,
using the example, I got approved at 1,000 square feet for a secondary dwelling on a secondary lot. But if I were to come in tomorrow,
No, it's
I would have to, it would have to be 650.
no, for tertiary.
the total,
But the
secondary on a secondary lot in the zoning bylaw has to be a church.
Oh, it becomes, you see, I still haven't, see, here you go again. I
That's
still
what I
haven't.
was trying to get my head
The
around.
secondary lot has to be tertiary?
No, if there's a secondary going on a secondary lot, it has to meet the requirements of tertiary, which means 650 GLA, or you can get a waiver.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I think that's gonna trip people up.
that is, you see, I get this, here we go again.
I mean, not just us, but like applicants not
Yeah.
getting it.
No, that makes sense.
that was interesting. It's a pre-existing, we're gonna get these in,
No, because
when
it's
we
ground
looked at
cover
this
ratio,
and
it's
we
not,
made this,
No, but your idea
we
is.
were thinking of, getting that
but
third
it's still, but you
house,
can't,
but a lot of
it's floor
a lot
area
of
ratio,
properties do
that's the
have
problem.
three, like, outbuildings.
So if you have two
And
floors,
they convert it to a tertiary, or even the basements that we're not thinking about.
Unless you put the secondary.
And maybe that's something we're gonna have to.
there's something
Well,
in the,
even
of the
given
three
the
houses,
size of it, we
that has to
may
be
want to look at
650.
upping that square footage.
See, that's what I'm thinking, that's
Because I
what I'm
think
thinking.
maybe even half of these won't be for us because it will meet that demand of that 400.
Right, and maybe that's how we have to rethink this. Yeah.
Because, 650 is a relatively small
Oh, it is.
place. I know what it's meant to be, building maybe for one or two people, but it seems like we're,
convert the garage to a house.
just recently, we're falling in the cracks a little bit in that size.
Right,
Actually,
right.
it's like,
It's like,
I still say, when you're starting fresh
floor area ratio,
of a lot,
For the tertiary.
you have the ability to conform.
I think that.
right.
When you're starting with something like this, there's a play.
But then we have to be careful about where that begins to track itself to, because on the other side of the coin, people are going to say, well, you seem to have this propensity for constantly waiving. So for us, I think what you have to do is you've got to kind of create that standard again of when do we say yes and when do we say, okay, it's got to be the other way.
you going, but I didn't permit it.
Yeah, and I think even with this one, this is interesting because there was a building that
You widen the road,
750 was on the ground, the other one was 814.
and so you see the curb line
We
go
were
really
actually
good.
going, I think,
But eventually,
the
I
814,
think it's,
even go higher, but because the ground cover may have been larger, but the actual living space was almost half the size of the other one.
well, it's gonna take, it's gonna take that.
1430. So it's just, on case by case basis. Right.
Sam bumped his head on something and AJ had him, and she had to take him back to work, and she has to meet with an accountant, so we had to go get Sam and go home and babysit.
I thought there was
Bumped his head on something.
combination.
No, because it's gonna be 5 or 6 years.
Nothing serious, it's just that he was in a cranky mood, and so she had to go, AJ had to get him, and now he has to get him from AJ because she has to go back to work. And then he's got work stuff, and it's just like,
I know, when I got back here in 2007, the first
Yeah,
time I applied,
not a
was on
happy
the
camper.
corner of Cliff and Pilgrim. And,
Okey-dokey.
Oh, yeah.
it took a year to get everybody ready.
The trade was we had like 4 hours of sleep last night. I have a client downstairs at the ZBA I was supposed to be with, so I wrote him all his talking points. Yeah.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, can we get back together?
Everybody, bring it in.
Thank you.
Now, Steve can sit on this one, right?
Yes.
You're on it for the moment. We're going for Tacoma Green. I hate that name. I've already said it 500 times. I hate that name. Reminds me of Cabrini Green, but there we go. Yeah. So, can't stand it. We don't have greens in Nantucket, never have. So let's go.
Moving forward.
Is this one yours? Sarah? Anybody else you want to come up here with? There's a whole bunch of people.
I understand how many people. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd love to move on from the name.
Yeah.
I
you're gonna have
think
to.
I said at the last hearing that we're willing to change the name if that's such a major issue, but
Okay.
I think what's in a name.
A lot.
So, with me today, Mark Hess, principal of Hall Keene, Trev LaFleche, who's the project architect. He's probably going to come up and present. Liz Dunn, who's the project manager for the architect. George Connolly from Williams Building, and Jessica Brown from MCLA, the landscape architects. Joe Longo, our civil engineer, was here. Unfortunately, he didn't anticipate the meeting would go so long, and he had to leave to make the boat. So I don't think we are really quite there yet with our civil engineering anyway, so that's probably fine. This is our first actual formal public hearing. The last time we were before you was a preliminary review. Since that time, we've had one preliminary review at the HDC, and we had a coordinated review with a lot of people from town departments. We got a lot of feedback. We've spent the last couple of weeks reacting to that, revising the plans. I think rather than giving you the whole presentation from the start, the way I ordinarily would do at the first public hearing, I think you guys are all pretty much up to speed with where we are. It's 2 lots, 124, almost 125,000 square feet. The parameters of the RFP, and just remember this is a town project done on town land as part of an RFP. 64 units in the CN. Currently, those have to be spread equally between the 2 lots, 114 total rooms. The relief...
bedrooms or rooms?
Well, bedrooms.
Okay.
The relief that we're seeking, just to run it down, obviously the special permit under 13930 and under the workforce rental housing community at 139.8D. We threw in a height special permit. There's a provision that you can have certain projections above your roof line above 30 feet. I don't think we currently have anything, but we did request that relief in case it becomes necessary. Parking under 139.18D, the aisles, driveways, and curb cuts under 139.20.1, and screening under 139.19. Not all of those may be necessary. And I think we're probably also needing the special permit on the interior sideline setbacks. I think you know that our timing is kind of critical here. The way that this project is running, we're trying to get both planning board and HDC approval done this fall so that we're in position to apply for funding before the end of calendar 2017. So, since you last saw the plan, the changes that we've made, we've committed to the flipped scheme with the buildings moved from along the southern side of the property to the northern side. We moved the fairground building closer to the setback along Fairgrounds Road, although we've still maintained the 20-foot green space buffer zone.
Wait, run that by me again, sir.
So the building is slightly closer to Fairgrounds Road than it was
In the preliminary?
in the preliminary.
Why?
That was feedback that we had gotten.
Oh,
Maybe
no.
not from you,
Oh, no,
but,
I wanted it farther away from the bike path. How
Okay.
much closer did it get? Any idea?
Do you guys know how much closer it got? I believe it's somewhere between 5 and 10 feet.
and we're maintaining that 20, there's still the 20-foot green space buffer zone.
Which is outside your property line, right?
No, it's on the property. The 20 feet is on the property. We removed the playground to allow for additional parking spaces. We have shown a possibility of a town playground and splash pad on the adjacent lot 82 on some of the plans, but that's not something we're proposing as part of our project.
You have control of 82?
No, we do not. That's why I'm saying
Sorry.
it's just showing a possibility. We're not proposing the playground.
So the playground is out.
The playground is out. Walking pathways changed from stone dust to aggregate concrete. The covered bike storage racks and maintenance shed were moved out of the setback areas, and there are more of them. The increased bike storage count from one building holding about 20 bikes is now multiple smaller structures holding a total of 78 bikes. We removed the outdoor grilling stations. Do you have revised plans, Tref, that you wanted to hand out?
I actually printed out the revised plans.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we have-
Okay, so maybe you have them.
We've got it.
It's easier.
On the screen also.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, great, thank you.
Oh, these are larger. You
Oh,
can see
these,
these a little bit.
these may be,
Yeah.
Yeah, this didn't reproduce well.
okay. We removed the outdoor grilling stations at the request of the fire department. We added split rail fencing along the western and northern perimeters of the property. Moved the community garden to the southern side of the fairgrounds building. We eliminated, I think,
Wait a minute, where'd the community garden go?
the community garden went to the southern side of the fairgrounds building.
Oh, that little, bunch of little squares?
Yeah.
Okay.
We eliminated the bus stops that NERDA said weren't going to work and they didn't want. So we're now just showing the existing year-round bus stop on the Maya Comet line, which is across the street. Fire access, we added a walking path and fire access right-of-way along the border of the town-owned public safety lot to allow fire truck access to the northern part of the buildings. We added grass pavers along the southern side of the Tacoma buildings to allow fire access. I just want to point out, we're still, I mean, here's the thing, the fire department wants access, fire truck access to all four corners of each building. So we're having to provide that. So, and we're still in conversations with the fire department, just so you know, so none of this is set in stone, but those would be grass pavers, not pavement itself. Because we do want to maintain at least some portion of the open space, the community open space between the parking area and the buildings. You know, what you can probably tell is, given the constrictions that we're working with, 64 units, 114 bedrooms on a set amount of square feet, and everyone wants more parking and more open space, that there's quite a give and take that's going back and forth.
More parking than open space for the person.
Okay. We added a cut-through from the parking lot through the town-owned lot 67, which you can see coming down to Tacoma.
Oh, down here?
Yep, exactly.
Got it.
How do
Added,
you get to that center? It's not connected to the parking lot anymore.
yeah, it is.
It is.
If you turn around, it is.
Is it grasscrete in between?
Yeah. All
Okay.
that sort of,
So it's not being used all the time? It's
no,
being
no,
used
no.
as an outlet?
It's just as an emergency
Okay.
fire access. We added 3 fire hydrants and doubled the dumpster capacity.
In one location, though? Or am I looking at multiple dumpsters? I see one.
One location.
Where are they?
It's all way over to the right, that big square thing,
Yeah.
number 9?
Let me finish,
Yeah.
let me finish telling you, and then Trev can come up and kind of walk you through how it's going to work and all that. We increased the parking spaces on site to 85. We're showing possible capacity of 151 spaces if you include 45 possible spaces on Waite Drive, 14 on-street parking spaces along the proposed rear access street on the town lots, which it was that kind of circular. We're not doing that as part of our proposal, but if it was done, there would be an additional, and 7 additional spaces on lot 82. We added 4 spaces that are specifically for mopeds and scooters. Those are in addition to the 85. We added 2 electric car charging stations and 1 space reserved for a car sharing service. And then we broke up the visual monotony by adding green spaces, bike sheds, and maintenance sheds to improve the appearance from Tacoma Way, because there was some comment at the HDC that the wide-open parking lot was too much unbroken up asphalt. The exterior building materials, if you want to know about those, are going to a mix of clapboard and weathered shingles, as in color suggested by the HDC. The brick is being replaced with naturally weathering sheet or shingles and copper caps at the end walls. The windows are being revised to be more Nantucket style with rectangular shapes and a mix of 6/1 and 6/6 divided lights. The HVAC units are incorporated with minimal visibility from the ground. They're on the roofs. And
Where'd you say that?
on the roof,
Okay, they've got this recess section up in the front.
correct.
Solar.
And we're still working with the HTC about how that works. We had proposed a railing system that I don't think some of the members were crazy about. So we've also, let's see, I think all these other things are just noted on the plan. The things that we are still working on that we haven't ruled out, but we are, because we know they're important to you, possible basements or at least partial basements in the 2 Tacoma buildings, either to localize laundry and/or storage. Fencing for potential ground level HVAC equipment if that ends up being necessary because we can't fit it all up on the roof because of engineering concerns. We're still looking at color and texture of the buildings, and we're still working on other feedback from the HDC. So that's where we are, and I will turn this over to Treff to kind of run you just through more of the details of the site.
Okay.
And I think,
There you go.
and if I run out of here, it's because I went to the HDC, the zoning board downstairs. It's not the site.
Is that still going?
There you go, you got
I
one
had a
more.
client down there, I don't know what happened to him. I can't believe that's still going. When you speak, however, when you speak into that microphone, just move it around and identify yourselves when you speak, so when Catherine listens to it, she knows who's speaking. Go for it.
So good afternoon. I'm Treff LaFleche. I'm the project architect from LDA Architecture and Interiors, and with me is Liz Dunn on the other side of Jessica. She's my project manager who knows the project extremely well. And then this is Jessica Brown from MCLA, our landscape architect. And I'm going to have Jessica now walk you through in greater detail most of the site-related issues that Sarah spoke to.
All right. So one thing to, it's going to be somewhat repetitive of what Sarah went through, but one thing to note is on page 1 is what we're actually looking for to have permitted. And then on page 3 is a coordinated plan. We've been working with staff at the planning department in discussion about what might be a plan for future use of the abutting lots. So we pull up my list of things. Yeah. So the first thing is that since the RFP, we've committed to the flipped version of this plan so that the 2 buildings are in the north rather than the south. That required, the push to be a little bit closer to the easement on Fairgrounds in order to get out of the setbacks near lot 82, because the lot is smaller on the north, and also to have enough space between the buildings for fire safety. So that's where that came from. Then, let's see, so closer to the easement, the playground we did remove. There was a lot of requests at the department heads meetings for more parking. And so we were speaking with the planning department to try and put the playground on lot 82. That was a suggestion from them that if we could use that space for the playground, potentially a splash pad, or the town could use that, that would open up space for parking on this lot. It also coordinated with the request to have to have a fire lane that was adjacent to those two buildings, rather than the fire lane being in the aisle of the larger parking space, because then didn't want to be that far from the building, they didn't want to reach over the cars. So that's an adjustment, so that second curb cut allows for fire access that's closer to the building, and we added some parking there. That space kind of took away the room for the playground right there, but it does allow, if you can see in the coordinated plan, an additional 7 spots in the future on Lot 82 if the town would like. It's on page 3.
It's 2 away from where we are.
Next one.
Put the playground down in 4.
Yeah, I know, it's just, this appears.
How do you propose to get control of Lot 82?
We
Well,
aren't proposing control.
we're not proposing taking control. This is being offered as a possibility by the town.
Gotcha.
So the town is broaching that subject.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
that's the correct one. And so there's the playground, the splash pad, and the additional possible 7 parking spaces.
Yeah. Again,
And here is the fire truck access that Jessica's been referring to here, with
Yeah.
the additional curb cut.
it was the fire chief at the department heads meeting had asked that the trucks be able to get access to all 4 corners of each building, and not have to reach over cars. The bike shelters are now smaller and distributed, and many more bikes than was originally proposed. Went from about 20 bikes to 78 bikes. Sarah mentioned the bus stop that we're showing now on the side. The dumpsters, we have doubled the capacity, and my understanding is that there may be interior to the building trash.
Well, we do have trash and recycling destinations within each of the 3 buildings. This is the main storage for exterior pickup.
The community garden is now south over here, number 2. And one of the things that was mentioned a lot in the department heads meeting is the material of the paths. We had originally proposed stone dust. We're now proposing an exposed aggregate concrete, so that it has sort of a more rustic look, but that it doesn't have the maintenance issues that stone dust can have. We've also added split rail fence along the bike path and along the northern edge to sort of set off the property. That was a request as well. Yes, and we've changed the parking to sort of read as 3 smaller lots rather than 1 massive large lot. We had originally not done that. We were trying to maximize parking, but this was a request from HDC, and we do like the way that it breaks down the space. And you can see in the coordinated plan maybe something that Sarah didn't go over, because it's not in our permit, but that we're allowing an easement for back lot access for these lots in Tacoma Way that would be able to exit on an additional curb cut on the parcel. And that's
This is a request from the town.
a request from the town. Yeah.
In order to reduce curb cuts on Tacoma.
Yep, and that would be that's where the additional 14 spaces could possibly happen, as parallel spots on the back of that. And we actually added 4 hydrants, not 3, as Sarah mentioned. Yep, 1 right there. Yep. Parking has increased to 85 spaces from 68 in the RFP.
70 on here.
It's 78 plus this
Plus
14.
7.
Plus 7.
So 78 plus 7 is 85.
85.
Yeah, 85.
We distributed the handicap accessible parking spaces as compared to the original plan that we reviewed at the preliminary hearing. We also added car charging.
Yep. So 2 electric vehicle charging stations and 1 car share and 4 scooter spaces. And then with the addition, within the sort of coordinated plan with the parking on Waite, those 14 spaces and the 7 spaces on 82, if this whole plan is the way that the town wants to move forward, that's 151 spaces.
Stay with the handicap for a second. You have to have so many van accessible spaces, and none of these are van accessible. They look like the standard. So I was looking for something that was bigger perhaps, or that the, one doesn't share the lane, that's a problem. One all the way to the left doesn't share.
That it shares the fire lane, so we were using the fire lane to the left of that is paved.
I don't know if that's legal. I don't believe
Okay.
that's legal.
We'll look into that.
And you need van accessible somewhere,
All right, we'll look into that too.
which is a different dimension than the other one.
Instead of 8 and 5, it's, instead of 8 and 5, it's
There's something larger.
8 and 8.
Yeah.
So it's 8, the van is 8 foot wide, load unload area.
And
So you
one,
get a little bit, you lose a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, but you can't use the fire lane as the access lane.
One, I think, based on the numbers, but
Okay.
which you could do right next to that.
Yeah. I think those are the big points. I think one, the permit plan requires licenses for the fire lanes, which are not on the property, in a couple of locations.
Can you explain what porous asphalt is as opposed to chip seal, which doesn't really stand up here?
Porous asphalt is an aggregate that the matrix itself allows water to go through, and then there's a reservoir below that can hold the water. So the water goes through. It looks just like regular asphalt. It doesn't have a gravel. Nothing's loose. It's just that the matrix has air holes in it.
So it's not chip seal,
No.
because that just never lasts very
No.
long.
So can I just point out to the board that this very property you're on has porous asphalt? The actual driveways around the parking area are regular conventional asphalt, and all the parking spaces are constructed with porous asphalt.
Interesting.
We have another location that I know of on the island as well,
Oh, the ones up front you're talking about?
all the ones here.
I'll have to go take a look at that.
You'll notice the difference in texture, especially on a wet day today. You'll notice it.
Madam Chair. And what, is there a design difference or requirement that
There
the
is.
traveled way is not porous and the parking is?
No, not at all, not at all. It was just a decision made by the design engineers for this facility, so, there is a maintenance requirement for it, because you can obviously understand that porous asphalt has a more open matrix as it described, and it can collect fines. And so there's a
gas.
vacuuming system, believe it or not, I know it sounds funny, but that's exactly what it is, that is required to be used for it. So, but it is a very effective way to manage stormwater on a paved site, and it's not considered to be impervious.
And what
at all.
about oil and gas that falls onto the
So it
parking
doesn't,
areas?
it doesn't mitigate that as much, certainly. So small oils and drips from various vehicles will still get trapped in the matrix underneath. So that's something that, the filtering mechanism that's underneath, so there's a change in aggregate, a support aggregate underneath the pavement system. So that is actually part of that filtering mechanism for that, the filtering system for that. So it's not, it's kind of providing stormwater infiltration and TSS removal all in the same place, as long as it's properly maintained and it's not overloaded with sediment,
Which happens here.
from erosion, which you shouldn't have at this location. And it would probably work just fine.
No catch basin?
There can be catch basins in certain facilities, but that is specifically designed to avoid that conventional collection system.
Interesting.
Like,
Okay. been a fan of Grass Creek. And trying to maintain it and try to mow it and try to keep it up, and it looks like crap.
Number
After a
18,
while.
yeah. One thing that we've been talking about with Joe, who had to leave the civil, is using a gravel base rather than the plastic, because that can sometimes hold up better than the plastic matrix.
There's nowhere where it's been used here on the island looks decent. And you've got an awful lot of it on this property.
Would it be helpful to go through each of these images, or are they self-explanatory?
Self-explanatory.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, the brick areas, are you gonna use
We flip that.
concrete and imprint it, or are you actually using brick?
We're actually proposing brick. I guess the question remains whether or not these are brick on concrete or stone dust.
Well, there's one right across from the site, just down a little bit to the left on the other side of the road, that has that stamped concrete, and it looks just like brick. And that may be a cost savings to you, since I don't think any of that, except for the stoops on the bike path, are visible from a publicly traveled way.
Okay.
So you might wanna look into the stamped concrete that looks like brick, but not brick, because it's a heck of a lot cheaper, and you don't have to reset the brick if it starts to come up or freeze, and as you know, it gets very slick
Okay.
in ice and snow.
Okay. We actually haven't had that specific question come from the HDC yet, so.
You will, but it looks just like brick. Take a look at the one just down from you on the other side of the street.
Linda, could I
Just
ask,
like brick.
could I ask Leslie something, please?
Yeah.
What's our role here? I mean, as far as the planning board's concerned,
Site plan review.
parking, traffic, because I mean, the gravel strips and all that, that's sort of new. Why,
Site plan review.
well, site plan review, but a lot of this to me seems like it's HDC, not.
Some of it may be, but at least like relative to the, Grass Creek.
The grass pave.
Grass pave, that's it. Grass pave, I mean, that's, it is functional. So it is part of your site plan review, like, you think that's going to be, it's gonna hold up over time, if it's going to be maintained in the way that it should be, if it's going to continue to function. I think that's totally part of it. You can say, no, we want that to be paved instead. We're concerned about the performance of that material for what it is that we're approving it for. Stamped concrete versus brick. That to me is more of an HDC issue.
But you might wanna look into it.
But I think asking if it's set in concrete or set in stone dust is, a question because it contributes to drainage more or less.
So that's
more
engineering
impervious.
review?
So I think, as long as it's related to the site plan, as long as it's related to the parking, the driveways, the function of it, the drainage system, I think the placement of the structures is fine, what they look like. That's something for the HGC to consider, the materials of the structures.
Okay.
Certainly, the location of the community gardens and the
Trash.
trash
that stuff.
and that sort of thing. I think talking about, how the trash and recyclables are handled, how's that gonna function, how are they gonna get from, in someone's unit to wherever it is they're going to go? And is that going to be something that people have to take out themselves, or are they gonna go down a chute to the basement and someone else is going to do that? That's something you can talk about. One thing that came up at the coordinated review, and I don't think anyone brought it up today, is, the basements, what's gonna be down there.
Storage.
The storage.
Lighting.
Lighting, the laundry, I think at least initially proposed a shared laundry facility in one
Yeah.
building.
Right, that
That's
was,
certainly something the planning board could talk about.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's some quality of life issues that are related to the site plan and how everything's gonna work in the end that you can talk about.
A lot of that stuff we brought up. initially,
So,
preliminary.
so what about the laundry?
They haven't gotten there yet. Are you still on the
So-
outside?
I think that's it for that side.
Okay.
Okay.
Just in respect to the location of the trash pickup, the theory is that we're trying to put the exterior pickup location that it's proximate to Wyatt,
Right,
so the trash truck doesn't come deep into the property, preserves our shared common space, with no vehicular crossing, it's all pedestrian or bicycle crossing, so that views out of each of the units is across a lawn space rather than parking. So the theory is that from a management point of view, the trash will be taken from each of the buildings to that location
By who?
here by staff, and then be picked up and hauled away from that location.
As long as it's staff and not a disabled person all the way over here, going all the way over there, somebody with a small child who has to come out and go back in. That's all gonna be handled by your management staff.
I think that is the direction that we're going now, because then it allows it to be properly done and maintained, and there's no unsightliness from path A to the trash enclosure.
Do residents have access to it if they're throwing in like a couch or a chair or whatever?
But that's a very good
You
question.
know, I brought that up with you
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I just want to add in, I've been speaking with Charlie over at Reese to talk about his experience in running other facilities, trying to get some of that solved on the front end, and try to address some of his feedback to make sure we have, not just physically, but in terms of budgeted, like how many pickups we need and how we're going to manage all this stuff, and what happens if there's a couch and how you manage those different pieces. So I actually think that what we have here today works from his perspective with the amount of storage that we have, with management and managing the trash from central trash rooms in each of the spaces. Like Sherburne.
You have chutes?
Well, if we have basements, we might do chutes. Chutes they're not all positives,
Right.
you know, because of the smell and all that. They can be difficult to manage, although they're nice because people go in there and it's not in the unit. So, you don't want to make the trash so inconvenient that people hoard their trash and then only do it, you know, like I used to do my laundry, right? You know, let it build up and then you do it all at once.
Yeah.
So we want to make it easy. We do have trash rooms, I think, on each floor in each
Correct.
building currently, and because of the separation requirements, you know, it's going to require a very detailed and careful management plan. I only know enough now to hand it off to my management folks to help us draft that up. That it's really a complicated piece, but we do, in terms of the volume and the yards of trash and the pickups per week and things like that. We use Sherburne. Was it Sherburne Commons?
Yeah.
Model.
Sherburne?
Yeah.
It's not an apples to apples comparison because of the tenancy, but it was Charlie's best comp as, you know, take it for what it is, for the kind of what we expect. And maybe you have more recyclables or less cardboard because there's no institutional food served there or things like that, to try to hone in on what our expectations are and make sure we have adequate facilities.
How big is this space right now?
For the trash,
Yeah.
right there, it would handle more than 10 yards in that space.
Yeah, but how big dimensionally?
Oh,
How
I
big is it?
don't know. that.
16 by 16.
Just- If you want a comp,
Yep.
that's a disaster. I mentioned it to you before, go to the housing authority.
Yep.
They're about 16 by 16, and a complete disaster. We've got a set in each one of our roads, and we've had to rebuild them. We had to put new gates on them, and they're about that size, and we only have 40 units.
Are the residents doing their own trash?
Yes, they are.
So part of what we've learned is there are two things with the enclosures is you have to have a person door, not just the big gates. Otherwise, people will just huck it over.
Yes, that's
And
what
that's
happens.
like 80% of the problem with a lot of these trash is making it. If you have the big giant gates, people aren't going to bother to try to open them up. So design them with a convenient person door, and then having a really strict policy where you manage large items, and everything else will really be done from the mostly by the staff, just in the event that someone throws something out there. But most of it comes into the main trash room. It's managed by the staff. Every once in a while, someone's going to drag something in there that won't fit in the trash room. And you know,
much to the chagrin of management. That will be their constant battle. But we also understand there are a lot of fines, and the separation requirements are really strictly enforced, and it's something that you as a community take very seriously. And relying on 64 residents and a lot of them big families to do that and manage that all on their own is probably more work than just doing it well with our own staff.
The only reason I brought that up is 16 by 16 seems awfully small.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we.
Well, we think we're going to need 3 pickups a week. So that's, between the number of trucks that come in and all that. Yeah.
Well, and one
You're
could
gonna have
argue
to play
that
it
more
out.
frequent pickups keep the unsightliness
There you go.
under control.
Right.
It allows staff to deal with road issues that come up,
Yes. And your trash is fresher, right? If there's pickups, it's not, doesn't stay around for long.
And you'll get
So,
more.
I just want to, we took that comment, that feedback very seriously, so I just want to let you know that
Okay.
it's still a box that we've just moved somewhere else on the site, but there's been a lot of more back-end discussion about how that box is managed and how we manage the trash.
Yes, I'm gonna be like, on that.
We will
'cause
have
I've already been through it.
We will have a written trash management plan
Okay.
as part of the final
Cool.
submission.
Madam Chair, through you.
Yeah.
You slightly talked about the basement. Have we gotten any kind of thought process about maybe putting other basements in instead of consolidating into the one unit with all the storage? I think at last meeting we were talking about if they weren't full basements, maybe partial basements in each of the buildings to have storage for each of the residences
In their own building.
perspective. Yeah.
And laundry in their own building.
Yes, and I think storage in their own building was also brought up. So we have been looking into that. We're trying to explore the trade-off between the cost, the additional egress stairs that have to descend, the cost of the elevator that has to go down, in addition to the additional volume of conditioned space that the buildings would have to accommodate. Because we're really dedicated to trying to get these buildings to LEED Silver or higher, the greater the footage of volume that's conditioned, the harder it is to achieve that higher threshold.
Are you gonna use a Lula or a regular elevator, freight elevator?
Right now, they're full elevators being planned.
Okay.
So instead of doing a full basement on one,
Have
the thought of
basements
doing
on all.
partial basements
On all three of them.
I have to agree with my colleagues at this point. I think you're going to get a lot greater compliance and on-site, again, on-site livability.
Quality of life.
Yeah, truly, if you
You're
only
welcome
have
that
one
way.
laundry facility there that masters for all three, people may be just as inclined to throw it in their car, go drive off somewhere and do it. Again, now we got more trip generation starting to happen. The more I think you can do in-house. Now, are the residences themselves designed for like mini washer dryers, or are you going to have hookups in those or not?
We actually do not. And
Okay.
we actually prefer that we don't do this.
And
We've done a study that they are incredibly inefficient from
Yep.
energy and utility.
And you gotta vent them and everything.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand, there's more problems. So that brings me back to, I think, in the end analysis, is one person sitting on this should really need to seriously consider making it user-friendly for everyone in each of these three complexes. And especially in the dead of winter, or when it's inclement weather as well, too, even as something as innocuous as a day like today. Do you really want to be schlepping your laundry across the yard at this point? Probably not. Would you bring it down to the basement and come back up and watch television, and then go back down?
Especially if you're elderly or disabled.
Right. It's a simple thing, but it's a big thing.
Understood. So we hear you. We haven't made as much stride in that direction as we have with some of the other site-related issues. That's been our primary focus over the last 3 weeks because of the feedback we've gotten from the HDC and from the coordinated meeting with the town engineer and staff.
So, not to dwell on that, the rest I like. I think you've made some significant progress from where we were at the last time. I liked where you were initially. You've taken it a step further. So, just as one member, I really thank you for the hard work at this point. Ed's going to be kind of critical for, I think, some of the issues that you've brought up about the gravel structure where the fire engines are going to run and stuff, just in terms of its durability. And I like breaking up and using different types of materials and things, too. To me, it's a little bit more visually attractive in that sense. But, those kind of things, that's
So
where...
my only comment is grass paved is a functional product. There's no issue with that. I actually had a site that I suggested using it on. And the comment I got was, from the fire department was, well, that's great, but you're gonna have to snow plow it
Yeah,
during the winter,
and you mow it.
just so you know. And I said, oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So you got, mowing is fine, and knowing where the left and right limits are is a function of landscaping. So another product like a grid paver block that grass grows through, a turfcrete type product might be easier to see, to deal with, and also perhaps to deal with periodic plowing. We all understand that in winter, the grass is, in more of a dormant state. But the fire department's going to require that be plowed. And so now you got to think a little bit bigger than, it's not Florida where that product works great year round.
Yeah.
So it's a great option. It's really a good product. It's just not.
No, we don't get much.
Right.
We get
I'll tell
ice.
you a story when I first moved here one day about how we don't get snow in Nantucket.
Yeah.
So
Used to
you
get a lot more
touched,
when I moved here.
I wasn't able to attend the coordinated review. You touched a lot of subjects that I would normally already talk about. Site lighting, I think I heard that you're still working on. I did talk to Joe Lungo before he left. He, assured me he's in the process of doing the civil engineering design. He did tell me that he was planning to speak to the fire department before he really took it to the next level. He's got to get a few things ironed out, and then he's going to start putting stuff together. So, the board has certainly seen many products from Horsley Witten Group, and there's no issue at all. I'm very familiar with them and with that team. So we'll, I'm sure, sit down and go through a technical review at some point. Go to their office and get you all there and kind of do that discussion. One thing I just quickly want to ask, kind of not related to anything I just said, but your site plan. So this is sheet 3, in the upper left above the, whatever it is, 16, 11, and 15, that parking space. Those parking spaces. On sheet 1, that's a vegetated swale, essentially, or a stormwater swale.
Right.
And I don't know what you guys are suggesting with that disappearing.
This is, again, discussions that have occurred between our team and the town as to how that currently proposed swale, I don't believe it's actually been executed.
Yeah, it's not, so it's not constructed?
It's not constructed.
Okay.
There's been some conversation about how it might be used differently. I think we really haven't had any further conversations.
It's a minor question, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if that came up during the coordinated review.
Yeah, we're trying to be cautious as to sort of volunteer the town to do different things as part of our original RFP. But Andrew and the town did want us to take a look at the whole site on, this is all, at the end of the day, town-owned land. And so how do we maximize the edges, not just the site, so that it works for all the abutting uses that the town controls? Which is why, we looked at Lot 82 differently, we looked at the easement down below, and one of the comments is, parking. Well, this whole strip here is looked at right now as sort of the edge leftover space for the public safety building expansion, and it's sort of the edge of our property. But if it becomes a dual use, walking path connected to the bike path, then we can start to look at it differently. Maybe instead of having a retainage basin type of infiltration system, that becomes more underground. We can have more regular landscaping along that strip as a green belt, and the town can, on their property, can gain 10 visitor spaces or whatever it is, which may be important if, you're talking about building this whole out as a community, so you're going to have lots of kids, more recreation, more biking. There's a lot that's been happening here that's even in addition to the impact of the workforce housing. So accommodating more spaces may make a lot more sense, and those are outside the secured area. And I think that there was a question as to whether it was adequate as it was. So we said, well, if you do this instead of as a retainage basin, you do it as infiltration that's underneath the parking, just like what they've done the rest of the site, the town gains 10 extra spaces or whatever it is, and we have more flexibility, and I don't have to worry about the bearing capacity of the fire. It can all be a grade.
Just
You know, the other thing too is if you do put that subsurface, that might, if 82 doesn't work out for your playground, you just take the next place.
If what, I'm sorry?
If 82 doesn't work out for your playground, that might be an alternative.
We actually thought about that at one point.
Yeah.
That we
Where?
put it there. The playground might
Oh,
go
no.
there,
It just,
No,
but it just
not
gives
right
you,
next to the fire station.
but it gives you some options to be thinking about, and I think that's important.
We all think that this is a much better.
Oh, I agree.
safer location.
No, no.
I agree. I agree with you.
It certainly does soften the relationship of, the police relationship with the community by having community many as part of that, the police and fire and all that. That is an opportunity. I think you can get the same opportunity by
Sure.
by Lot 82, but, I think that's something we've discussed internally.
Lot 82 would be my preference still, Continuance, yeah.
Okay.
So the only other thing I see circulation-wise that I would recommend you do, which you may have already done, is right here, you need to have a little backup area, similar to like that. You have a little backup area. If you drive all the way down here, these are full, now what do you do?
So that's a
Back up.
fire lane, sorry.
Correct, so I would make that a paved.
It is paved, sorry.
Paved.
That's a white hatching similar to the
Okay, good.
aisles. It's just
And
painted.
again,
It is paved.
Oh, it is paved.
It's hatched, so it's clearly
fire lane.
it's
Yeah.
a fire lane, so
Gotcha.
that no one does.
So
And
already-
that again puts that
Thank you.
handicap space into jeopardy, so
Yeah, or no
check
live
it out.
parking in there, right?
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have a question from the table?
Yeah, got a few.
Go, I've got a few.
You want to go first?
No?
Okay. And so through Ms. Madam Chair, we're going to get a civil engineering plan and that will address whether, and you'll be able to address whether, even with the ports, there is any need for oil separators or things along those lines. Okay, so I wouldn't get into that, just, I'm curious. With respect to the new plan, I'd just like to thank the applicants for the changes, appreciate some of the sensitivity shown to prior board comments. I have some constructive criticisms, it should go without saying they're constructive. We all want to see a good product here, and since it's town land and you're working as a town on an RFP basis, you're going to have a little bit more license than any other developer will ever have to do something that's creative and imaginative and can address both your RFP needs and concerns of the various points you're working with. I do want to note that the RFP, the minimum requirements were that there would be a maximum of 64 units in a minimum of 3 buildings. And I'm not suggesting that in a way to undercut what you've done, but I am suggesting it to, because I know it's an issue, it's been brought up here and it will be brought up at HDC, is to rely on basement space more heavily. I know you mentioned not wanting to do that because of leads, but leads has got 5 primary criteria. The cubic feet is not one of them. Sustainable site development, water savings, energy efficiency, material selection, indoor environmental quality. So I would just like to say, keep the basements in mind because they're important to a good product. They're going to be important to the sense of massing. They're going to be important to the sense of, I think, just general acceptance by neighbors and community. And I think that utilizing basement space will allow you to perhaps create a couple extra parking spaces, create a little bit more open space, make that little bit more effort that's going to make it all the difference in the world with general acceptance. And maybe not just by this board, but by the community as a whole for years to come. This is a project that's going to be there for 30 or more years. So again, these are constructive criticism and points for your consideration and for the board's consideration, as a matter of fact. With respect to the parking, I think I do have some concerns. We're waiving the minimum requirements, asking to utilize off-site parking without knowing conditions of any of the adjacent development, what the town is going to do specifically with those, which if this were an applicant who came in out of the blue, that would be something we wouldn't do. And I'm not suggesting that we need to know specifically in a written plan, signed in blood, what those other lots are going to be and what they're going to be used for, but I
do have some concerns, and they're reasonable concerns. If you look at page 3, we're looking at 14 spaces on the, what I'll call the southern side of the lot, which infringe on the 5,000 square foot lots that are there, which those lots were, my understanding, were designated at town meeting as single-family residences. So I'm not suggesting, I'm not bringing that up to undermine the solution. I'm just saying I think that as a planning board, we should be considering what the whole picture is going to look like. And the reason I mention that is because if you look at the number of parking spaces, you know, look, nothing's going to be perfect. We all hope for perfect, but it's not going to happen. But if you have 114 bedrooms, or 6, let's go to bedrooms. And let me put it a different way. We know that you're asking to waive the minimum required parking.
How many spaces?
That we're asking to waive?
Yeah. On site.
It's, well, our understanding is it's one per
One per
bedroom,
bedroom.
so 114 times.
So 24. Okay, so you're asking to waive 24 parking spaces.
No. No.
It's 85 compared to 114.
29.
Right. 29. Sorry, I did by math.
Yes.
Parochial school, forgive me. So let me just finish my comments, if I may, please. I think, you know, the zoning numbers aside, the practical reality is that you're probably going to have one car per bedroom. Everyone we know has a car or a truck, or a car and a truck, and any kid of working age is striving to have a car or a truck so that they can get around. So you've got all those people living there, and this is a quality of life thing. This is why I'm bringing it up. But that's just the people who live there. Throwing a barbecue, throwing a dinner party, throwing a play date, and all of a sudden, where all the parking going to go? The concern that I have is that if you're maxing, I'm not saying don't maximize the number of bedrooms that you're looking for, but if you're maximizing, if you're utilizing more ground space than you could if you use basement space, you're losing an opportunity for parking that I think you're going to need on site. It's my personal opinion, but I'm just doing the numbers. It's pretty simple math. Whether you get, you know, the numbers wrong by 5 or 10, you're still talking orders of magnitude of potential issues. So I'd ask you to consider that. The other thing that I would ask that be considered is traffic flow. I know that we have the planning board and the planning department and NPDC have been working very hard on developing and coming up with solutions for the old South Road corridor. However, Newtown Road is not, to my understanding, in that, and I do believe there's been some discussion about improvements. But the number of cars that come here and park, and the vehicle trips per day, look, we're vehicle-dependent animals. That's just how we are. Okay? And we eat, and we have to pick kids up from school, and we have to, you know, drop them off at soccer. We have to do all these things. Well, those utilities and those facilities are the straightest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but the straightest distance, or the straightest line between here and there is Newtown Road. And that road is, I think, underdeveloped. There are issues with it in terms of the traffic surface. There's no dual-use bike and sidewalk. And I understand that we are not here to be asking you to expand and do, you know, contribute to those things. But I do think that we as a planning board should consider those. And not only because of the traffic load here, but with the fire department going in. And there's daycare on that road and so on and so forth. I think the issue would be a couple just minor things with the maintenance shed. I have some concerns. You know, I got a little bit of background in managing facilities. Having your maintenance shed there is probably going to be a little bit problematic. Again, having basements and having more open space is going to provide you some to alleviate that. You've got a car, you're going to have to drop off equipment and tools, you're going to have to pick up equipment and tools, even if it's somebody who's there on foot day by day. It's in the middle of the parking lot. So it's just a general comment, again, to be constructive. I am concerned about the trash and the convenience. I do think the comment that was made earlier, someone made about the number of pickups, 3 pickups a day is, or 3 pickups a day, 3 pickups a week is going to help you a lot. In facilities we manage 10,000 rental weeks over a 20-year period. You've got 2 pickups a week during I would ask you to give consideration for convenience. It's a quality of life issue. People are going to be living here for 30 years, not necessarily as a stint, but, over the course of time, and having the convenience of being able to put your trash someplace would be helpful. The other thing I wanted to mention was, I think bikes and bike storage. I appreciate the fact that you've increased the number and you've distributed them. I would ask that if you intend to have all bikes put in covered storage, that unless you have, a manager who's going to be full-time running around making sure that happens, is that you consider more distributed locations and perhaps some that are more convenient. And I point out to the upper left corner of your page 3 as an example where you've got the unit with doors that exit out onto the bike path where people are going to be going with their bikes. And this is just an example. Whereas if they need their bike, they have to come over to the nearest. So if there were bike storage more distributed, perhaps you could work something out there that might be helpful for quality of life and use. And then I think the only other thing I'd like to suggest is that the gardens, I did read the RFP, and one of the things that was included was a consideration for a multi-generational play space. I don't think that gardeners would consider those multi-generational play spaces, but they may be a credit towards that on the RFP. I see you put one in, but again, if there was more consideration for more of them on a distributed basis, that would be a nice thing.
You're talking about the community garden? over
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Okay.
So those are just my thoughts as
That's awfully small, too. Okay, I'm just gonna throw a couple of things at you. You addressed most of it. The lighting, the laundry, basements, storage. I'm not happy that it moved closer to the bike path. As you know, I've been concerned about it looming over Fairgrounds Road because we talked about the length of it the last time was, 180 feet? 170, and then you get another 100 some odd feet with the fire department, then you get this mausoleum. That concerns me running along the bike path, close to the bike path. I would rather have seen it backwards. I don't think you can fix that now, but I'd rather see it back away from the bike path and have more screening in front of it to sort of break up the impact on the bike path itself, that length, because then you got 300 feet of building when you add the two of them together. Trash, I've already, the playground, I'm gonna wanna know as we move along here, and I expect to having more special meetings for you guys, because you're on a time crunch, I expect probably every 2 weeks maybe, or something along those lines. Well, your deadline with the state is what, November 1st?
It's probably not that early, but closer to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so we've really gotta move this along. We can't meet once a month and expect to get this done.
Just say yes.
Me?
Well, make it easier.
What I'm gonna wanna know is if you have a commitment on lot 82, because we've really busted Richmond on a playground in areas of open space where the kids can run around. And I'm really gonna bust you on the playground on this. So I'd like to know what's going on with lot 82, as soon as you can find that out. I think the outdoor grill thing, I want you to have another discussion about that, because people that's a quality of life issue. And whether they're gas burners, gas from a tank, and like ours were at home, it was, fed by a gas underground, and you just turned it on, as opposed to charcoal and all the rest of the crap. Just revisit that.
It's still on our agenda, we're just trying to deal with the fire safety issues.
Yeah.
We didn't want to.
It would obviously have to be away from the building and somewhere in the middle, somewhere with a little patio area or something. I'm still concerned about the parking, like Steve is, and I know some of the other members have been concerned about the lack of parking. We've had issues with the housing authority, with people parking all over the road. We've had issues with other things we didn't require enough parking for, and the last thing we want is for people parking all over, just all the way around the whole structure, except for the bike path. So I'm still concerned about that. You don't have the access to Wait Drive on-street parking, because we don't even know if that's gonna happen. We don't know what's happening there. And to say you're gonna have overflow parking back here, we don't know that yet. There's some unknowns with the parking, and the last thing you want is chaos all the way around this thing and up and down Tacoma. Because those people that are living on Tacoma and the bike path over there are not going to put up with cars parked up and down Tacoma. Or necessarily up and down Waite Drive. And I think I was called by a surveyor the other day about the concern about where the sidewalk was. I think the on-street parking is pushing the sidewalk on the east side, if we're going east and west, north and south, into those lots that are going up and down the right side of Waite Drive. I'm not sure exactly if I'm seeing that here. But the last thing I'm going to want to do is taking any space away from those lots on the right side of Waite Drive. So I need that fleshed out a little bit more as to where these sidewalks and parking is. How deep into those lots is that pushing? And Steve mentioned, I think somebody else did, how deep into the Tacoma lots this stuff in the back is getting pushed. Those lots are not very big. So I have a little bit of a concern about that.
Those real parking spaces, those 45 that you're planning to put in?
Yes. Yes, so we're, I believe we are accurately showing the sidewalks and the parking spaces along the sidewalks, and then,
On the other side of the street?
On both sides of the street, and,
Yeah, how far into
taking
that is
into
pushed
account
into
parking
those
spaces
lots?
for each of the lots. No, I believe I think we're acknowledging.
If that's
Is that
the
the
property
property
line, then that would be a sidewalk width.
Just to clarify, we're not proposing to reconstruct we think the town has, with all those lots, you gotta park the car, period. You know, unless you make parking for those lots on Tacoma Way, if you wanna build another secondary, tertiary, all that, for those small lots. So, we think the opportunity really is for the town to consider maximizing the use of that right of way when you build that street, and make sure you got as many spaces as you can. And I think safe pedestrian passage will also be really important. Probably, if not on one side, but probably both sides, if you're really gonna be building out all those ways, all those lots. And I think there's at some point, maybe even an international road through, I don't know if that's not the current plan. But, using, there's probably future plans for the planning building down there and developing of that site, and how does that come into play with pedestrian access if there's a commuter lot and things of that nature. If that becomes a hub for transportation, a lot of people will be walking from this site and all those lots down that road.
Well, just be careful of the impact. My concern is be careful of the impact on the lots that you don't have control over.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a fair point. I think we can clarify that right now, we are showing the sidewalk on our property here, and then extending that sidewalk across 82 and to the north, and we're doing the same. We are putting the sidewalk on the properties of
Yeah,
those.
that's what was a
along,
concern about the surveyor was asking about that side in particular, not your side, but that side. And how much are we banging into those lots?
Right, and to reinforce Mark's point is to make this work well as additional parking for the general area, that's what we would have to do, or that's what would have to be done.
Well, just
And we would
figure
do-
out the impact over
And
there.
we would do the same, that we're proposing we would give up some of our property to initiate that trend, perhaps. That's what I think about it.
Okay, and I think that was it from me. I want to open this up to the public, because there are
Ryan,
people here.
comment?
Yeah, quickly.
I just wanted to suggest, this is along the lines of imagine. I'm not suggesting that there wasn't imagination used. I said it before. This will be the third time. I think that overall, this is a very thoughtful design, and it addresses a lot of concerns in a lot of creative ways, in positive ways. But one of the things that might be a consideration is this is town land next to town land. And if we're looking for a little bit more space to put in distributed gardens and bike spaces and trash collection or bins or a maintenance shed, is if it can be done without impinging on the buildability of the fire station to what I'll call the north, there's lot space there. Come in with an expanded lot plan. Not to push these further over up to, not the main structures necessarily, excuse me, but perhaps to, perhaps to address some of the other concerns. And that's what when I was referring to imagination and creativity and having some license, that's what I was referring to, is you've got town land next to town land. That's one of the things I was referring to. You may have an ability in working with the town to make that happen. Thank you.
given us in terms of what we support from the town to make use of the other properties, and we have a very creative team, as you can see, to try to problem solve and take every little square inch that's offered as an opportunity to try to maximize it, make the best of it. We have two things. We want this to be the most successful, attractive community as possible. We're in it for the long term. It's a 99-year lease. We have to, we have to sleep where we live. We have to live and breathe this for long term. The important distinction is, and that's why we broke the plan into two. Is one is we need a permit that only requires us to do what we can control, because we can't have something that's contingent upon another public process for offering an RFP for additional land. There could be no anticipation of land without a public process. So if that becomes a requirement of the permit for this board, then there's no way we get permanent time to get our application in. So we're fine to be aspirational and try to incorporate these other wish list items into, hey, we want your plan to work with these other ideas, and we'll do all that. But when it comes to permitting this project, it needs to be our box in terms of what the permit's for in order for us to make it in time. That's, and whether maybe that's not within the purview of this board in terms of that deadline, and there's, there are other considerations. I understand that, but that's what our push is from our perspective, is make it work on the awarded land for the particular project.
That's what concerns me about Lot 82, and that make or break for me on the playground and the extra parking over there and all that stuff, so you really find out what that is sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to open it up. Yes? You and I both have to be somewhere.
I may need to leave.
Yeah, you and I both have to be
Public
somewhere.
hearing ends. I just want to reiterate to the board, this is a town-initiated project.
Correct.
These people awarded the RFP to act as the developers and to come up with a plan, but it really is a town project. It's important that the board remember that this land that we're all sitting on right here was built with affordable housing as part of the intended purpose. And the developers only have a certain amount of land to work within to meet the requirements of the RFP. So if there are other things that the board feels are important that are beyond their control, then maybe that's something we should be talking about with the Board of Selectmen. Wade Drive, that's a public road. All the improvements that are made to that road will have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, so that would include the location of the parking spaces and the sidewalks, and whether or not that stays within the roadway layout, or if it goes over onto the adjacent town land that's been laid out as lots. I think that's really beyond what they're here to talk about today. There is a timing issue that's really important. There's funding that the project is eligible for, which the chairman mentioned. So I think it's really important for you all to focus in on, what's within your purview, what's really important, and what they need to address, and be clear about that, so they can work on that between now and the next meeting.
Well, we also want to avoid Amelia Drive. Go in both directions.
That's totally outside of the discussion here today.
Yeah.
And I know, maybe there should be some improvement to some surrounding roads, or, other pedestrian improvements that need to be made, but that's something to talk about at a later time.
Well, just
It's not
two-way traffic.
related
If we're dealing with this,
to the project.
and they're claiming that they're using on-site parking to offset some of the fact that they're missing 29 required spaces, and they brought it up, then you're gonna wanna know that those spaces in the road can actually be there, and that you can get two-way traffic, unlike Amelia Drive, where it's an obstacle course. So, we've talked about the problem with that, and widening that, and the town taking that, and this is a town road. We don't wanna end up with a problem, because they're counting on-street spaces that can't be used, because we can't get two directions. So whatever happens out there has to be accounted for. But if they're trying to say that they're gonna offset their lack of parking with those spaces, we need to know those spaces are gonna be real.
I agree with that. The difference here is that Wade Drive is public, and it's totally within the control of the town to develop it in the way that it needs to be developed.
Right off the
Amelia
bat.
Drive is private, and unfortunately, the planning board at the time, didn't put in the restrictions necessary to manage that road.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
I really have to open this to the public.
okay, just quickly, I don't really comment, and I'll be very brief. I'm just talking about the parking. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's only so much amount of space here. The more parking we get, the limited green space we're constricted to. There are a couple of things. You know, we have bike paths here and a more economically friendly, or not economically, eco-friendly island. We have bike paths. We're looking at the inclusion of possibly a year-round shuttle service, which we have a shot of right there, accessible only a couple of feet away. We have those maybe the 45 on-street parking in addition to the 85, so we're actually at 130 now. And we have, in today's times, we have Lyft and Uber, which a lot of people are using. So although it always is a concern, I think for 2 meetings and the plans that we presented, I'm really impressed.
Okay,
Thank you.
we have to open it. Guys, we've had enough up here. There are people that have been sitting here for 3 hours, along with us. 3.5 hours. Are there any comments from the public? Come on up. You gotta come up. You gotta come up and talk into one of these things. These aren't so much for us, it's for the TV camera.
Yeah. My name's Thomas Arena. I'm a neighbor on Tacoma Way. My big problem right now is the butters notice from the planning board. I didn't get them in time. And, these are all my neighbors. The only reason they're here is because I told them. They never got their butters notice. So I just want on record that I want to object that you guys even hearing this until this butters notice issue is resolved. I know you say it's the post office. I get my bills every month.
Well, we've had this trouble.
I
I
know.
gotta tell you, like Monday night, we heard it like 3 times, the same thing. We know
Yeah.
when they were mailed out, because some actually did respond if they got them on a certain date.
Yeah.
And then some people didn't get them at all.
I mean, I got this
And you
on
live
the
right
11th.
next to it.
On the 11th I got it, and this meeting was supposed to be on the 11th. And the only reason I knew about it is because I went in. It's postmarked the 31st, so it took 11 days to get to me, but.
Yeah, we're.
You know, I got a lot of comments to have on this, but I don't think, and I know all my neighbors do, and these are only 2 of them here now. You know, there's traffic, there's parking, there's a ton of issues. And I just wanted on record that I'm objecting to you guys reviewing this application right now. Thanks.
Well, we had to open it because of the people, but we're not closing it.
I'm not saying
We're
we're closing, I'm
it.
just wanting,
Yeah.
it's on record that I'm objecting to it, because the neighbors aren't being notified.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How many people on that list? There was like over 100 people on that list.
I was the only one here, so I texted you guys.
Where do you guys live? I know where you are.
Got it.
And I work on Amelia, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, because I took a look at the list and you're all on it. I know you're on it. So you can comment, get your comments together for the next one? You're not gonna get another notice from us, but we'll set the next meeting. That's what we're gonna set today. Okay. Anybody else in the audience? Okey dokey. Any more final questions from the board here
I think that's.
for now?
It's fine.
Ed, anything?
Thank you.
You guys are in contact anyway. Okay, when do you want to meet again?
Thanks again. Really, thanks for all the good coaching.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you know I've never liked the 3 large buildings, but I'm sort of stuck with that at the moment.
Or the name Tacoma Green.
Which is growing to like.
Or the name.
Well, let's set the next meeting.
Yeah, can we, I'm gonna make a motion, we move to October 12th for this.
No.
Time out, what?
Might be
No. We have a
Talk
big
to me.
meeting that month. No.
Oh, there, okay.
Yeah, it has to be sooner than that. It has to be not when we're doing anything else.
Well, I'm not sure. So we
Well-
have the next HGC meeting when?
The
26th. So we need time to actually engineer and bring some engineered plans between the HTC feedback and the next meeting.
So what would work well for you guys?
And then, so that the next normal meeting will be October what?
12.
12? I think that's probably the best we can do. Yeah, probably.
I don't think it's enough time for you to do it. Well, let's put it this way, in my opinion, you might be able to get the plans submitted on the 12th.
Yeah.
It's not gonna get reviewed by the 12th.
I mean, the 12th, I mean, we could all, we'll have things to report by the 12th.
Sure.
In any case.
There you go.
You give us new plans or whatever you're going to do.
And Joe is
I don't think
underway.
it makes sense to have a special meeting before then.
He started his work.
Okay.
You know, and if nothing else, you can assess where we're at on
And we'll
October
get
and
might be a
update us,
Right, that's all.
and then we can get a special meeting like right
Then
after
we can,
that.
yeah, we can start looking at that.
There are a bunch of butters that want to get a voice in, and the sooner the better.
And the nighttime is easier for you guys because you all work. Okay. We'll have to see how much other stuff is on the 12th, but our normal planning board meeting starts at 6. I think we're good on the 12th?
Can we put them first on the agenda? Are we?
Which I think is a good idea.
Okay, yeah, we'll be first up, so we usually
So you
start
have
at
to wait?
6. Hold on, one conversation, please. We usually start at 6, but if it gets out of control like this one did, we had to start at 5. So just check with the office. But right now, it's 6 o'clock downstairs.
Downstairs here?
Yes, here. Yeah, that's our regular planning board meeting, so we're just gonna take it up first at the regular planning board meeting.
And you're running this first meeting on the agenda.
We'll take all the consent stuff first. Yeah, the public hearing.
So,
Hold on.
I'll second the motion for October 12th. Barry made.
Okay. All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay, are we closing now? Somebody wants to adjourn?
Just, I'm gonna be real quick.
Hold on, we're still in session and the TV's still on.
This will take 2 moments. Can you do me a favor, Holly, Catherine? Can we start hammering out a letter to the Postmaster General of Nantucket?
It's not her fault.
You know what, I understand, I know.
It goes to
it's-
Brockton or something.
Whatever, okay.
Providence.
I understand, but listen, there's a Postmaster General set for each town, okay?
I know her.
So,
Well,
let's.
very good. I've written them lots.
And I understand that, but what the heck, let's at least try. That's all I'm asking you to do is try. Just hammering out a
These are
letter.
certified.
Are we allowed to use Federal Express?
No.
To send a butters notifications?
We'll probably have to
That
change
will
the
cost us
Well, or you,
$1,000.
whatever the other thing is.
It's the fee structure. I know.
Because
Right, we'll see on the
it's
12th.
only a couple bucks
If
more.
you guys have comments you want to get in before that we can
It gets
look
there.
at, that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, maybe at the next meeting we can look at alternate methodologies, but this is simple. This is a piece of paper and a signature. That's all. And if nothing happens, at least we've made an attempt. It's an attempt. That's all I'm asking you to do. It's real simple.
I know I've mailed stuff on Island. It takes more than a week off.
And I know people are frustrated, but just to not do anything is one thing.
Well-
To at least try to do something. is
Do you know
another.
what I used to do when I was at the ZBA? We never had to do anything certified, and I don't think we did, but according to the Attorney General. What we used to do is we used to separate them into island and off-island, and I would take the island ones, 284 or 54, and they would keep them in there and stamp them and tape them here, just so you know. Yeah, we're adjourned. All those in favor?
By the way, did you confirm Wednesday, the 4th of October for the meeting with Richmond?
Yes, 5:15.
Go, right?
5:15.
At 5:15, not 1 o'clock.
No, Nat can't get back. He's at Steamship Authority.
Thought I sent that to you. I
All right,
apologize.
guys.
Holly, you may have.
If you can separate them,
The issue
we're not.
is, we don't, people say, oh, you never mailed it, I never got it, and we can be like, oh, really? Looks like.
Yeah, but it takes time, and she was there for 2 days trying to do it.